I'll be back. I'll be back.
All right, good evening, everyone. It's Thursday, November 16th, 2023, and we're here for the monthly agenda-setting session of the Athens-Clarke County Mayor and Commission. We've shifted this meeting up by a few days. Typically, this would be the third Tuesday of the month, but we would like to give everybody the Thanksgiving week with no public meetings. So we certainly hope your Thanksgiving is wonderful and you get to spend some warm time with those who you love. We always begin with the civility pledge, which was provided to us by the Georgia Municipal Association and that we have adopted. And that reads that the way we govern ourselves is often as important as the positions we take. Our collective decisions will be better when differing views have had the opportunity to be fully vetted and considered. All people have the right to be treated with respect, courtesy, and openness. We value all input, and we commit to conduct ourselves at all times with civility and courtesy to others. I want to let everybody know there are going to be several opportunities for public input tonight. Terms of public input are comparable at each opportunity. There's going to be an opportunity on the consent agenda, which are the first 5 items. There will be an opportunity on each of the planning and zoning items, so those are items 6 through 11, and I'll call for public input separately after the public presentation by our planning staff. And then there's going to be an opportunity on old and new business, and those are items 12 through 34. At each public input opportunity, you will notice that there is a light in front of Clerk Spratlin, right in front of me. It has 3 colors on it that might be familiar to you. Green is when you begin speaking. Yellow is when you have 30 seconds remaining, and red is when your 3 minutes of public input has expired, and I will thank you for your time in the chamber tonight. So, that noted, we begin with our consent agenda. These were previously approved by the agenda team for consideration in one vote at our next voting meeting, first Tuesday in December. But tonight is an opportunity for any commissioner who would like to remove an item from consent agenda for further discussion. So is there any consent agenda item that a commissioner would like to remove for further discussion? Commissioner Fisher?
Yes, sir. Item number 18.
This is just 1 through 5.
Oh, I'm sorry.
1 through 5.
Okay.
Yeah, 18 is already on discussion. So any item 1 through 5 that any commissioner would like to remove for further discussion? Commissioner Hoare? Okay. All right. Any other item? All right. Would any member of the public like to speak to items 1, 2, 4, or 5? So those are the items that remain on consent. 1, 2, 4, and 5. All right. Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take a seat down below so Clerk Spratland can lower the screen, and we're going to hear our planning and zoning items. We have with us tonight Assistant Planning Director Bruce Lund. Bruce, good to see you, sir.
Thank you.
And I believe we have, 6 through 11. So we've got 6 items for discussion tonight. Some of them are text amendments, but some of them are development plans as well. So we're going to begin with the first one, which is on Little Oak Street and Byrne Street. I see the screen coming into focus. Technology's working in City Hall tonight. Tax dollars well spent.
It's like a Polaroid. All right. Thank you, Mayor Gertz. Item number 6 this evening is a request for a planned development at addresses 437 through 445 Little Oak Street, as well as 111 through 151 Byrne Street. This item was heard at the most recent Planning Commission meeting. The request is to rezone the property from RS, which is single-family residential, RS5, to RM1, and to assign that PD planned development designation. The applicant is asking for a mixed-scale residential subdivision on a combined 11.74 acres. The 8 parcels would be combined to make the total development site. The proposal includes 3 housing types. Each of the 3 has an A and a B type, and you'll see those in a second. And those would be arranged on 63 parcels with on-street parking and 3 surface parking lots. The applicant, as part of their application, also asked for 8 waivers to development standards that would be normally associated with the RM1 zone. Just to get you oriented with the site, this is off of Little Oak. You can see the Oconee corridor, which is that wider band of asphalt running through the site, through the photo here. This is just the other side of the rail to trail, the Firefly Trail, and exhibits a good bit of tree growth. Future land use is traditional neighborhood. The stippling that you see on that is the airport overlay. Here's the current zoning and the proposed zoning. On the left is the current RS5 zoning, which is the predominant zoning classification for the neighborhood, and the request to go to RM1 is indicated on the right-hand side. You can also see the 8 lots involved. This view shows some of the environmental areas that are present on site. On the north and on the eastern side, there's a creek, and there's a good bit of topography loading down to that creek across the site. And this is the development plan that was submitted with the application, showing the 66 total lots, 63 of those to have residences. You'll see 3 points of access. The 1 point of access that is to the west, coming immediately off of Little Oak, you'll notice it goes through a portion that is not immediately abutting the right-of-way, and that is property owned by CSX Transportation. And I'm going to take you really quickly through the architecture that was included with the PD. One of the 3 types of residences submitted is a tiny home, and they have a Type A and a Type B. The Type A is 480 square feet. Type B is 384. They have a cottage, Type A, 756 square feet. A Type B, 794 square feet. And then a family home, Type A, which is roughly 800 square feet, and a Type B, which is the largest of the types, at just under 1,200 square feet. Planning Commission's recommendation was they found this to be consistent with the 2023 comprehensive plan and the future land use map. They found it consistent with the comp plan goals with regard to adding housing in an infill location, particularly in an in-town location, has the multimodal connectivity with the Firefly Trail, and is also actively including a variety of housing types as part of the proposition. The Planning Commission also supported the waivers, 1 through 8, that were requested, but they had a series of conditions of approval as well, 9 in total. Real quickly with these, the first one deals with connecting to a water main in Byrne Street. The second one is concerned with the use of permeable paving, which is an atypical type of product for public works to maintain. So they're asking for the developer to maintain that material in the on-street parking. Similarly, with traffic engineering, there was a request to have analysis prepared by the applicant to show that the development will not exceed 400 vehicle trips per day. That was a threshold determined by engineering staff, that if they stay below that threshold, the design standards and the curvatures of the street system would be acceptable. The fourth condition was to look at the parking reduction calculations that were part of this, because that is something that the applicant is asking for, is to reduce parking. The fifth is dealing with the ability to amend the plan in cooperation with staff to accommodate a sewer layout, with the condition that those changes, should they come along, would not result in increasing the density, reducing lot size, losing parking, or impacting tree canopy as part of the project. The applicant's also asking for a waiver regarding a play area for children. During the course of deliberation with the Planning Commission, the applicant talked about the proximity to Dudley Park being the reason for this waiver, as well as proximity to the rail to trail. Condition 7 was seeking a waiver for standalone parking, which is not something that's typically allowed in the RM zone on a single lot. There's also a condition for tree canopy, and then, as I noted before, crossing the CSX property is going to require some sort of agreement or easement with CSX to make that possible. But with that, Planning Commission's final recommendation was approval with those following conditions.
Thanks, Bruce. I appreciate it. All right, now it's time for any member of the public who would like to speak to this to open up their 3 minutes. And just give us your name and place of residence.
All right, for sure. Name is Marquez Williams. I live at 102 Westchester Lane, apartment 14. Yep. All right, so first of all, just want to speak on the housing. For most people don't know, when I was a little boy, I moved into a Habitat house. This was very important, very essential in my life, to me and also to my family. I remember moving in very vividly. The first night, my mom was so happy to be able to move into, what was now our home. I remember there was no furniture. She told us to grab some pillows, grab some blankets, VCR tape, TV, and she said, "Let's go sleep in our house for the first night." The one thing I really remember is just how peaceful and quiet it was for me and my siblings to, run through the house, say, hey, this is our room, this is the view out the window, and just a smile on my mom's face. After moving so much and staying in different apartments in different, parts of Athens or whatnot, we found out a place that was ours and that had a lot of stability. As you know, when you own something, you're invested in it. You take care of it. That home was our nest. I'll tell you for sure, when we came home, that house better had been cleaned, if you ask my mom. The one thing that I learned, from being in that house is a lot of teamwork, taking a lot of responsibility. Got a kick out of doing laundry for the first time because we never had a place to be able to actually do laundry in our house. I came to understand that the importance of taking responsibility and the pride and confidence and self-esteem that come with that. I learned the value of teamwork. I had a quiet place where I could escape the chaos of the outside world and read, study, and dream. I dreamed a lot. In that house that I was in, six years old, I was able to envision my future beyond what I could experience beforehand. That's why I can't believe that I can go to college and more. I was in a master's program where I got drafted into the NFL. I was in that house the day of the NFL draft in 2017. It was a special moment, probably one of the best days of my life in that house. Folks who never experienced housing insecurity have a hard time understanding how fundamental it is, how much difference it makes to a family and to a child's future like mine. The Micah's Creek project will give that security to families right here in Athens who need it. And all of us here will know, all of us here will never know all the stories like mine that will come from it. But trust me, lives are going to be changed like it changed mine. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
For sure.
Others who'd like to speak to the project in front of us? Good evening.
I'm Justin Crichton with WD Engineering. Our offices are located at 355 Bonita Street here in Athens. Here representing the project, happy to answer any questions. I think staff did a very good job summarizing the overall project. We've been through 2 planning commission meetings and are fine with all of the conditions that they have recommended for approval. Again, happy to answer any questions that come up.
Thank you, Justin. Is anyone else here to speak to this project tonight?
I'm Charles Smith. I'm Vice President of Operations at Athens Area Habitat for Humanity. Hopefully this afternoon, Commission members and Mayor received an email from our Executive Director and just wanted to highlight a couple of things that were in that email. Hopefully you received this colored drawing. A local architect, Olivier Bonamy, has drawn this for us, and then we were able to take it to a local artist, Stan Mullins, to color it for us. This is how we think Micah's Creek is going to look. We're very proud of this product and look forward to hearing more about how this can come to fruition. Rather than going through the details of Spencer's email, I wanted to mention also that the houses for home ownership in this project will be at $399 a month for the mortgage, a monthly mortgage of $399 a month plus taxes and insurance. That's for a 30-year window because we offer 0% financing. We finance all of our mortgages, and that's how folks are able to afford to get into our homes. Those who will be living in Micah's Creek will be coming in at 50 to 80% of the area median income, and we're very grateful for the support we've received, not only from local neighbors, but also from the Airport Authority, for the Planning Department, and the Planning Commission. And we look forward to getting continued support from the commissioners at your vote next month. One further thing, the study that we're going to be doing for those who are living as homeowners, for the children in the local school system, we're very confident that the stats we have from earlier studies show that 90% of the families whose children live in Habitat homes in Georgia do remarkably better in schools. So we think that there'll be a dramatic advantage for those families living in our neighborhood to be able to do better in schools. 4 out of 5 of those families recorded that they did They were better economically, financially secure because their housing needs were so much lower than normal. And then 7 out of 10 said that they either came off of public assistance altogether or cut their public assistance by 50%. Those are stats that we think will be borne out in the longitudinal study that we have set up with the University of Georgia. So again, we're grateful for the opportunity and look forward to continue working with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Is there anyone else here to speak to this project tonight? Good evening.
Good evening. Fahey, my name is Fahey. I'm at 195 New Hope Drive, Athens, Georgia. Before buying my Habitat home, I had been living in public housing for more than 36 years. I raised 3 kids on my own as a single parent. Now I have a home of my own to enjoy. And I helped build it. I saw the walls go up. I saw the siding go on. It took some time because everything stopped for a while during the pandemic. But after waiting over 3 decades, I could wait a little while longer. This past summer, I received a power bill for $0.00. As hot as it was, my solar panel brought my electricity bill down to nothing. For someone like me on a fixed income, that is truly a blessing. I know what it will mean to these local families to be able to buy their own home while their kids are still in school, and with prices so high, they are not going to get that chance without Habitat. I just want to thank everybody who helped make Habitat Home possible. You are changing lives for the better. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Is there anyone else here to speak to this project this evening? All right. This is in District 3. I know you've had some recent dental work. Commissioner Taylor, I don't know if you're in a position to speak or if you want to defer.
I want to speak to this. Me and Commissioner Fisher actually walked through the bushes, and my son, along with Spencer. Yeah, I wore my boots. I was ready. I grew up in this area, and so I've always known for that area to be only woods. So to see this developed and for it to be developed by Habitat is Commissioner's dream, my dream. To everything that was said at this podium, that's exactly the sentiment of my community when it comes to Homes for Habitat and what they do. It gives families hope that they'll have a home of their own that they can own. And so I'm very excited about this development, and I'm really excited. So.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Link.
Yeah, we've heard about this for a while, and I'm really excited to see it moving forward. And I have no problem with the waivers, and I'm glad that the condition for a playground was added on there. I know it's, half a mile or so from Dudley Park, but Dudley Park doesn't have a playground, and it means a lot when you can send your kid just around the corner to play. So I'm grateful for that condition. And the parking, I don't have a problem with these parking waivers. If you look at the rendering of this neighborhood, it's very much like a traditional neighborhood like Rock Springs, where you have very tiny lots, a variety of small homes. Not every home has its own driveway, a lot of on-street parking. In a community like this, the hope is you won't need more than one vehicle per family, or, very few families will need more than one vehicle. When you do have parking problems in these neighborhoods, it's because students start moving in and they have a car per student. So I don't foresee that being a problem in this neighborhood at all. I have no problem with the parking waiver that was requested. I watched the Planning Commission meeting, and I think they had a very fruitful discussion, and I really look forward. I love the variety of homes. It feels very organic, as if it kind of grew on its own. Who knows how long it'll take for the whole thing to be built out, but I think there's a real holistic and natural vision for this neighborhood, and I'm really grateful to Habitat for moving it forward. And I know that some of the nearby residents have issues with the idea of that many more people in their neighborhood and possible traffic impacts and the loss of trees and wildlife. But the fact of the matter is we have a community that's in desperate need of affordable housing, and this is precisely what is being offered. And too often, the affordable housing is just another mid-rise apartment building. These are actual homes. People have their own front door and their own little patch of green, and I think that means a lot to families. You know, there are plenty of folks who really want their own four walls and to live in a real neighborhood where your kid can go out the door and ride their bike around the block. And that's what we're seeing here.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Myers?
Yeah, one thing I just wanted to check. Did I read that about the playground, just so I understand? I thought the condition was applicant shall request a waiver from requiring a play area for
Was
the
that the
children. Was
Yeah.
that, which one?
Number
Was the
6.
condition not
Yeah.
asked for?
No. They're
What's the-
asking for a waiver from that
Okay.
requirement.
So they're not having
I'd like to
Correct.
put that condition on there. Maybe we can talk about that.
in between. I will note, I actually passed by the fire, on the Firefly this evening coming in, and it was quite busy with people. So the idea of seeing more people in there, just every real community spirit and that green, what do we call those, vertical park? Linear parks, thank you there. Linear park is wonderful, and having kids there. I just wanted to check on this, just from my understanding. I don't think this has anything to do with the approval or not, but the project with the Gaines School Elementary, is that for all 37 units that are like multi-bedroom units? Yes, and then wasn't there some, if I remember this correctly from the beginning, of the tiny homes, are they specified for certain populations?
So they'll be offered through the Habitat program. The idea is to integrate people that don't necessarily need a full-size home, so artists, musicians, really diversify the population in the neighborhood. So maybe not families, but people that want to live in Athens, maybe don't need a full-size house, still qualify.
But there wasn't something in the, maybe it was there wasn't something like half of those are for veterans or something? I'm imagining that.
What's that? Veterans?
Veterans and artists, yes.
Okay, like half and half, whatever. And also, are you all using the same habitat model where, as one of our speakers talked about, or both of them, where the homeowners will be working on them as well? Okay, so it's a,
500 sweat equity hours.
okay, so it's going to be busy over there. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Hoop?
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I'm excited to support this. I hope we'll move forward supporting it as it has come from planning. I'm open to hearing commissioners' thoughts on it, but I was at the multiple commission meetings where this was discussed, and feel like rejecting any of the waivers will mean fewer homes or the homes being less affordable, and we are in the midst of a severe shortage of affordable housing. So we have a reputable organization stepping up to help us tackle that problem, and as Commissioner Link noted, to offer homes for sale for people to not just have housing security but to build equity. So yeah, the critiques that I've heard various people air in past meetings, or the concerns about the waivers, I just really want to emphasize that to make modifications to this proposal to try to address any of those concerns would be to reduce the number of homes that we're offering or to require that they be larger and therefore more expensive. And so I hope that we will support this as is. Thanks.
Yeah, Commissioner Thorne?
I'm just gonna say it's long overdue. Glad to see y'all. Hey, Faye.
All right, well, thanks, everyone. We're going to move on to the next project, which is at 129 Peach Street.
All right, special use 2023-10-1950 is for a special use permit at 129 Peach Street. Applicant is Jada Fiorentino. The request is a special use for a halfway house in the RM1 zoning district. The applicant is proposing to occupy an existing single-family dwelling. The subject parcel is just under an acre in size, 0.92 acre. And the proposal is for a women's sober living facility. Just want to note that the process that's involved with vetting these at the state level and the local level requires that we have a hearing, but no action taken at the December 5th meeting. There's a 6-month review that follows by state agencies that are involved in regulating halfway houses. And I think this is something similar that you may have seen recently with a Highland Park item. Here's an aerial view of the site on Peach Street. Here's the future land use designation, traditional neighborhood. Zoning designation currently RM1 would stay RM1, but would have the special use designation if approved. And the site plan that was associated with this was basically a survey of the two subject parcels that are under that common address of 129 Peach. Planning Commission's recommendation. Considerable discussion took place, and to a person, I think everybody on the Planning Commission felt that the proposed use would serve and address a community need, particularly for a vulnerable population. But after considerable deliberation, the vote was taken for denial, recommending denial, as the proposed location was found to be inappropriate due to its secluded neighborhood setting and lack of direct access to Athens Transit. So just again, a reminder about the two public hearings. First one would be on the 5th, and we're scheduled, if everything goes smoothly at the state level, for this to come back to you June 4th of 2024. But the Planning Commission's recommendation is for denial.
Open now for public input on this for 3 minutes for each speaker. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Jada Fiorentino, and I live at 179 Hiawassee, Athens, Georgia. Basically what we're asking here for is for a handful of women to recover in this home. And what that means is they'll live there while they attend outside meetings, receive counseling, repair their families, restore relationships, keep this home and this yard clean by doing chores and repairs, learning to budget, getting their children back. It's going to be no different than any other resident. While most of these women don't have vehicles, I myself and other staff members give them rides, and it's also a short jaught through the woods right there. McDonald's is right there, and there's a bus stop right in front of it. They have caseworkers. It's just, we just believe we're a part of the solution, and the drug problem, the opioid crisis. This house used to be a place for homeless people and addicts. It was run down, it was dilapidated, and code enforcement had been called out on it before. We've renovated this home, and we believe that it increases the value in the neighborhood. I have gone and talked to some of the neighbors and offered them to come over and have a barbecue with us to try to incorporate like just a good feel situation so everybody was comfortable with us there. And so far that went pretty well. So I'm hoping that we can move forward. This is honestly definitely very much needed. These women otherwise don't have anywhere to go. They're trying to get a foothold back into life, and they're doing the next right thing. And I myself, having been in that situation, I know what it feels like. And without a recovery house, for me, I don't know where I would have gone. What would I have done? So I just hope you guys will consider that and maybe turn the denial into an approval and let us just stay. Thank you.
Thank you, Jada. Anyone else here to speak to the project on Beach Street?
Evening. My name's Kristen Carlin. I live at 225 Lone Star Drive, Bogart, Georgia. I just want to say what a life changer living in a recovery house was for me. You know, I didn't know how to live life. I didn't know how to have a job. I didn't know how to have connections. I didn't know how to do anything. Since the time I've graduated from my recovery house, I've started working at New Life House of Hope. And I've seen so many lives changed and touched by this program that it's amazing. It's amazing to see these women come in with no hope and no goals, and they think they have no future. And what's taught in a recovery house is how to be accountable, how to love, how to be loved. Some of us never knew how to be an adult. You know, I was 38 years old before I learned how to be an adult. And that's what these houses teach us to do. They teach us to have connections with the people in them, the people in the rooms that help us. It's family. And we love these women so much, and we know it's possible. We know that a new way of life is possible because me and Jada both have been through it and lived it, and now we're trying to teach other women how to do that also. And I just think it would be something wonderful in Athens-Clarke County. Like, we have such an epidemic going on, and we just want to be part of the solution. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Ms. Carlin. Is there anyone else here to speak to this project?
Good evening.
Good evening.
I didn't plan to speak on this evening. I frankly wasn't even sure it was on the agenda, but since I was a psychologist in this community for 42 years.
Just need your name and place of residence for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought of giving that to you. Marilyn Vickers, 197 Witherspoon Court. Since I worked in this field that long, beginning in family counseling service and in private practice and in the schools, I know how important these services are. We need more of them, not less. And so I just felt compelled to stand up here and say that on behalf of anyone else who's dealing with what you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vickers. Is there anyone else here to speak for this project tonight? Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Linda Davis. My address is 167 Peach Street, which is directly across from this proposed house that we're talking about. We have 8 residents on our street. It is a dead-end street. It does not connect to any major highway. We have very limited space for turning around. And in the short time that this house has been operating without this special use permit, we have seen the traffic on our street increase significantly. So if it's not fully operational and we're already seeing additional traffic, I am concerned about what happens when we put 10 people. It truly changes our entire community. Our living experience is absolutely gone. And we will have to adjust to the transient nature of 10 new people in one space. They can't leave or come to their home without passing by my house. And so there's always this now new amount of traffic. I am absolutely not opposed to halfway houses. We need them. We need more. We need them regulated. We need them to be accessible. I would love to be able to simply stop when I'm going by all of the homeless people that I see whenever I leave my home, and making sure that we had a place for them to go. It disturbs me that they are sleeping on the street. They're sleeping in tents. They're sleeping in huts. They're sleeping on Helen Street in homeless camps. We have a whole effort now, finally, in this community that I moved to about 18 years ago. We have some new development planned. We thought this would again become the community that Dr. Ida Hiram thought she was building when she subdivided this land many years ago. I would like for our community to have a chance to be able to thrive as a single-family community. That is my request.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Is there anyone else here to speak to Peach Street? It's in District 2. Turn it over to Commissioner Link.
Yeah, I watched the Planning Commission meeting, and I heard Ms. Davis's concerns and the concerns of other neighbors, and the planning commissioners pointed out some important information too. about the particular location of this, being that it is in an area that has seen some regular issues with drug dealing and crime, and there's a fear for the safety of the residents of this kind of facility. They're in a really vulnerable position. I also have a couple of questions about the current RM1 zoning. Under that RM1 zoning, this lot could accommodate about, 15 bedrooms?
That's about right.
And the house that they're asking to hold 5 to 10 residents is 1,200 square feet. That's smaller than my house, which I share with my husband, which is too small, quite frankly, for 2 people. I'm just wondering if this special use permit goes through, could the applicant then expand upon this house up to 15 bedrooms?
The zoning would allow for that, that's correct.
Without going through this process again?
The use would be established by the special use
Okay,
permit.
so they could build a second house or a third house even, and expand it into a larger facility to accommodate even more residents?
Zoning would allow for that.
Okay. I think that is the root of the concern, right there, is that, we're looking at not just, a current small house holding a handful of folks, but the possible expansion into a larger facility, because that would be allowed by right once the special use permit is approved. I also feel like, a house like this should be somewhere where it is more accessible to transit and jobs without having to walk through kind of isolated areas and areas where there might be some illicit activity going on. I know the one woman mentioned walking through the woods to McDonald's, where that's exactly where this kind of activity is taking place. This neighborhood backs up to one of the highest drug activity overdose hotspots in the county. That's a big concern, is just that these facilities are operating under the radar all over town. There is one on my street operating under the radar that I believe is going through the system for approval. I'm not sure it's safe for these folks to operate in this neighborhood where they are more isolated and there is that much activity. I hear from folks in Columbia Brookside about, folks sleeping in the woods and a lot of illicit activity going on in precisely this area, and it's very isolated, so there are not a lot of eyes on the streets to catch it. So I have concerns for the residents who might end up here, and I have concerns about the future development of the facility.
If I could clarify, special use permits do have a binding plan.
That's a binding site plan?
Binding plan. So that plan that I showed is what would be binding, so that the envelope of the house as it exists today is what was submitted. They didn't show any kind of expansion.
Okay, so the house, okay.
So they would have to come back and amend the special use to be able to expand.
Okay.
But your calculation on bedroom density is correct.
Yeah. So I'm just curious as to why they're even going through this process, because in an RM1 neighborhood, by right, you're allowed to have multiple residents in a house, and
It's the function of the halfway house.
the function. So even in RM neighborhoods, they have to, if you're going to do a halfway house, you have to. Okay. It's not just a matter of violating no more than 2 unrelated.
That's right.
Okay.
Commissioner Davenport?
Yeah, so I do have some concerns about this proposal. I do like the function, but it's just the location. Like Commissioner Link has said, it's kind of hidden, dead-end street, residential. The neighborhood that's adjacent to it is not a very healthy neighborhood, and if it is, my bad. But I've not heard any good things to come out of that adjacent neighborhood, and there's really not a real great access to employability, to commerce. There's no bus stop. It is kind of hidden, and just traversing through the bushes just to get to McDonald's, or it's not not something that we want our residents to be partaking in. But I will be probably denying this motion.
Commissioner Myers?
Yeah, I listened to the Planning Commission meeting as well, or was there, and I am very sympathetic to the people who live on the street who spoke, many more than were there before. I was kind of surprised when I went into Q Public and realized that the street that I went up and down on Google Maps looked like a single-family neighborhood, and then the zoning was RM1. And, that kind of puzzled me, what the history is there. And also, we went through a halfway house proposal over on the east side that I was very involved in, and I went and visited with the people. It's in an area that matches the density of the building and the halfway house matches what's around it. Where there are multifamily homes and duplexes, apartments, townhouses, and such. And when I looked at this, there are no regulations on the halfway houses in terms of capacity. I was a little surprised as well that this was, I believe it's described as having rooms for 5 to 10 residents, and it's a 3-bedroom, 1,248 square foot house. Are there any requirements for halfway houses in terms of density in the rooms? Could they put 2 bunks in each room and have 12 people?
From a zoning code standpoint, there's not. From state statute and the regulations that they have to work through for licensing, and Ms. Fiorentino could probably speak to this, there are requirements at the state level. And building code and fire marshal inspections come into play on a facility like this, which looks at how those properties are set up to handle that kind of occupancy at that density.
And actually, another question following up on that is from this, odd procedure where you have a hearing like this and then you don't vote for 6 months. In this case, can the group run this as a halfway house until that vote? Is that correct?
The special use permit is required to be able to occupy and function at the location.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Houle?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I had a couple questions. I'm not sure if planning staff can answer this, or maybe if the applicant can. I can just ask them all at once, and y'all can take them as you. So one is, do we know if New Life House of Hope is certified by GAR or a comparable certification organization? GAR being the Georgia Association of Recovery Residences. For example, I know when we had freedom from bondage in here before, they are. And then I am also curious, this kind of piggybacks on what Commissioner Myers was asking, but we heard from the applicant that they're asking to stay. We heard from a resident who lives on the street that they've seen an uptick in activity. So, what does approval of this change in terms of what's already happening there versus what would happen in the future?
Bruce, are there some elements of that you can answer before we?
Really, well, the second part, we really have to have the special use in place to be able to move forward. The first part about state approvals, that's probably a question best put to the applicant.
Okay.
Would you like the applicant to respond to that?
Yeah, if they don't mind coming up, and I guess if they could also speak to that second part too. If we're hearing about people already being quite active on site, but it's not functioning as a halfway house yet because there's not this approval, what's going to change?
I am in process with GAR, so it's in process. Part of their requirements is that I'm zoned properly. I actually bought New Life House of Hope from another lady on March the 1st, and I had no idea this zoning area, I didn't know about any of this. All I wanted to do was help women recover. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I've never done this before. So I had, several women that were going to be displaced. So I started the process and did what I can. I didn't know it was going to take 6 months. Is it going to change anything? Probably not. Does that answer what you asked?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Jay.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Okay.
I feel, I'll just say this, I feel mixed about this. We talk a lot about the housing needs, behavioral health needs. People who are in recovery always note that connection is the way out. And so, places like this are what provide that for people to stand a chance. And we do have a shortage of places like this in the community. So, I think there are some legitimate concerns about whether or not this is an ideal location. But I also appreciate the remarks of, I think it was the applicant who said, these neighbors are no different from anyone else living on the street. I mean, they're people who are looking for a place to live, but who might be living in circumstances where it's extra hard not only to find one, but to, stabilize their lives. And so I'm going to be thinking this one over pretty deeply I guess we had 6 months to do it, but I would ask colleagues to do the same, The question I think we should always ask ourselves is if not here, then where? We frequently hear from people similar concerns, and maybe sometime over the next 6 months, the applicant can build a stronger relationship with neighbors and ease some of their concerns. But it might not be ideal in terms of you walk out the door and you're right at a bus stop, but it's within the loop, which is a heck of a lot better than most places people can find anywhere to live. And it might not be ideal in terms of how short of a walk it is to a store, but not too far of a walk to CVS or wherever else, and certainly a lot closer than many other places would be. So anyway, not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good, I guess.
Commissioner Thornton.
Yeah, I'm glad we have some time on this also. I think I'm going to come down there. I haven't visited Linda in a while, so I'll come and visit and see for myself what's going on. I do have mixed feelings. I think that I do think that these are the people that we need to pay special attention to. That's just where I am and how I'm wired. But I do understand folk in small communities, dead-end communities, dark communities. Safety is always an issue too, but I am glad that we have a little time to investigate this a little more. I didn't watch the Planning Commission meeting, but I did hear about it. So I'll be visiting you, Ms. Davis, and Ms. Y'all. Okay?
Thanks, Commissioner. All right, we're going to move on to the next item, which is West Cloverhurst Avenue.
All right. It's a special use request for 120 West Cloverhurst Avenue. The specifics of the request are these: special use in an RS8 zone to convert an existing legal non-conforming duplex use into a legal conforming duplex use. Specific purpose is to allow an attached garage with guest quarters as an expansion of that existing legal non-conforming duplex use. There's an aerial photograph showing the property, intersection of Cloverhurst and Bloomfield on the northwest corner. Future land use indicates traditional neighborhood, and existing zoning is currently RS8. The hatch line that you see there is because it is in the local historic district. This project came through to the Historic Preservation Commission for approval of a certificate of appropriateness for the construction, actually the demolition of the existing carport and the new construction of the attached garage structure with living quarters above. This is the site plan that'll be associated with the special use permit. This is also the same site plan that the Historic Preservation Commission saw. And here are architectural elevation drawings of the existing house that is shown without the detail of its siding. And then everything that does have that detailed siding drawing would be the new construction, more to the rear of the property. The duplex, as it's currently set up, has a front entry facing Cloverhurst and then a rear entry that faces the existing current carport. That rear entry to the second unit in the duplex would face that connector that goes into the two-story garage structure. Planning Commission recommendation is for approval. They found it to be compatible with the 2023 comprehensive plan in that it allows the property to serve a greater variety of households and has potential for more affordable housing in a preserved historic structure. They found it to be compatible with future land use map, zoning map, and applicable ordinance provisions, and that the special use criteria had been satisfied.
Thanks, Bruce. Is there any member of the public here to speak to this West Cloverhurst project? Good evening.
Good evening. I'm David Matheny. I'm representing Armentrout Matheny Thurmond. We're located at 330 Research Drive. I think that this is a familiar project to you. As Mr. Lonnie recognized that this property was approved by the Historic Preservation Commission, actually on 2 occasions. The recommendation of approval by the HPC was challenged and appealed to this body, and the mayor and commission affirmed the design. So I come to say that we're not here to talk about design, but we're really here to talk about use. And there are several examples of duplexes scattered throughout the residential, single-family residential area. And because this property was being used as a duplex since the late 1960s, as far as we can tell, it's now an opportunity for a property owner to make it a legal conforming use. This is also about property rights. The proposed garage and guest quarters is something that would be approved outright for any property owner in this zone. We're not asking for any special zoning variances. The zoning as it stands, we're meeting all of the zoning guidelines. And we're actually making this a conforming property by removing the existing carport, which is, if not on the property line, practically on the property line. And so by removing that and creating the proper rear setbacks, we're bringing this property into conforming. So I know there's concerns about a special use, but we're actually using the tools that we have to make this property legal conforming, and that it's about property rights for anybody that lives in this type of zone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Matheny. Is there anyone else here to speak to this project? All right. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Rich McCormick. I live at 515 Highland Avenue and have been a resident in this community for over 30 years. I've followed this project closely for 2 reasons. I believe in the importance of historic districts, and I believe the Totten family living at 440 Bloomfield have been wronged. The Tottens built their home in 2015 and met all HPC guidelines. They expect it to be protected by those same guidelines. They're retired and simply seek privacy and decency from their neighbors. I'm here tonight because y'all are the only government body that looks at the entire picture in its totality, including the impact it will have on adjacent properties and their occupants from a humanistic point of view. The HPC put on their blinders, approved a breezeway connector, and I don't think they ever considered the impact and implications of the breezeway. At this point, I think everyone understands that a breezeway is a loophole of sorts, and once a breezeway is approved, a much larger garage with apartment can be built. The HPC, unfortunately, has no guidelines on breezeways. and decides based on what they call context of a historic district. It's a very subjective process. Last night, I don't know if you're aware of this, but the HPC denied for a third time unanimously a breezeway in the Woodlawn Historic District against staff recommendation. Moving on to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission approved the plan for 120 West Cloverhurst after less than 10 minutes of discussion. The idea of eliminating the deck on the apartment which overlooks the Totten home, their one-story cottage, was mentioned by a staff member, but the commission ignored this thoughtful gesture. I feel like that was a missed opportunity to create a solution and perhaps a compromise for both parties. If you'll recall from the special called meeting that took place here in September, the owner of 120 West Cloverhurst stated that he wanted to develop the property so that he and his growing family of 3 young children and his spouse could potentially reside there. And I feel like his actions speak differently. I ask, how does a garage apartment help create a home place for a couple with 3 boys under the age of 10? I would also ask, how does changing the legal definition of 120 West Cloverhurst from non-conforming duplex to conforming duplex support the notion that he's building a home place? I think he has accomplished creating a triplex, if such a term exists, and
Thank you, Mr. McCormick.
and one that probably will not be impacted by future short-term rental regulations. Thank you for letting me finish. Appreciate it.
Anyone else here to speak to this project?
Mr. Mayor, should we ask any speakers to maybe line up?
Yes, if anybody else is going to speak, may line up. Good evening.
Hi. I'm Amy Covey. I live at 340 Bloomfield Street. I'm here to speak against 120 Cloverhurst. This should have never been approved by the HPC. The breezeway should have never been approved in the first place. I'm well aware of the tedious process to get approval, as I've been through it 3 times myself, including being denied once over a small addition to the back of my house. You have to make sure your windows are just in the right place. The window mullions match the existing house. The addition will not overshadow the existing structure, et cetera, et cetera. Nowhere in the Bloomfield Historic District is there a house or an apartment complex with the breezeway attached to any other structure. Yet this was just breezed, no pun intended, through the approval process as if it's the norm in my neighborhood. A similar project was proposed on Woodlawn, and this was denied. Where is the consistency? It seems excuse of why it's okay to add a 3rd living space on this 1/4 of an acre that used to include the lot next door is because there are apartments across the street, apartments that have been there since 1951 and 1972, or because there is a housing crisis and a need for low-income housing. I suspect that if this is rented, it will not be to a low-income family, but to university students that want to live in our wonderful neighborhood close to classes instead of the multitude of luxury student apartments that they have to choose from. We've heard a lot about it's not going to be a rental, but extra living space for the owner because it can't be a rental. That's not reassuring, as I live amongst ordinance violation after ordinance violation of single-family homes. And the Tottens are great neighbors. They're a great addition. It is a travesty. I feel that the breezeway is not necessary. The large deck is not necessary that will be overlooking their house. I don't have a problem with the carport that's there now is not very attractive, so I don't think any of us would have a problem with replacing that, but we don't understand what is the need of a large deck overlooking their house, and we don't have a lot of privacy as it is. Finally, this is a highly visible corner lot on a very busy street and a 4-way stop that people rarely stop at. Every addition to the neighborhood brings more traffic and increased parking issues. I enjoy walking my dog, but if we continue to pack as many living spaces into existing neighborhoods, it's not going to be safe or enjoyable anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Covey. Good evening.
Hi. My name is Susan Totten, and I live on Bloomfield Street. No one wants to live next to a weekend party house. No one wants to live next door to a house operating as an Airbnb triplex. Not only do I believe this, so do your ordinances. 972 expressly prohibits, as permitted, use duplexes in all RS zoning. The only special uses you can consider in this zoning are churches, schools, daycares, temporary uses, commercial outdoor recreation, and personal care homes under 972. This requested special use is none of those. The special use process in 921 highlights that only certain uses are permitted in each zoning district, only as special uses. I understand that the staff report wants to lean on 915.8D as a silver bullet to consider this application, but it is not, as 915.8D still requires conformity with Chapter 920. An expressly prohibited use such as a duplex cannot be salvaged under the plain language of Chapter 920 via the special use process. The law is clear that the proposed special use is expressly prohibited and cannot be issued by you for this property. Any attempt to grant the prohibited special use will only result in the county spending thousands of dollars to defend and void an improper request. The application before this committee is requesting approval of a design which adds a new garage with a third residential space above it, a triplex. The applicant does not live in Athens and use this property as a party house. The applicant previously admitted to renting this property out for years as an Airbnb during the historic preservation process. The applicant also owns another rental duplex on Riverdale Drive near East Campus. Anyone who thinks this proposal is unobtrusive, as staff report claims, has lost their marbles. The addition of the garage and third living space will be a 50% growth of enclosed space to the main house on a less than 10,000 square foot lot. Staff falsely equates this property with other area properties. There are no other duplexes in Bloomfield with added additional living space via garage. While you hear the applicant and staff point to a property across the street or the Mia Casa apartment complex as rationale while this project should be rubber stamped, the commission has to draw a line in the sand to delineate where residential single family should be and where it should not. We don't have to decide that tonight because the zoning ordinance already says so. It would undoubtedly, any approval of this application sets a precedent for every other residence in Athens-Clarke County to request their own exceptions to the law to build a duplex or triplex and jump into the Airbnb party house game.
Thank you, Ms. Todd.
Okay.
Good evening.
Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, my name is John Totten, and I live at 440 Bloomfield Street in Bloomfield Historic District. I am 76, retired from the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, and this is my forever home. I am a combat vet from Vietnam and Cambodia. Few have run that gauntlet, and I have PTSD and am nearly deaf as a result. Those of us that came home learned skills of perception, looking at what we saw, seemed to be, and asking what if, survival skills. I spoke last night at a meeting of the HPC on a similar situation concerning a breezeway as a clever new workaround to approve as the breezeway bypasses the traditional process for approving accessory structures, one that has served us for years. They unanimously voted against the HPC staff recommended project once they fully understood the potential consequences, not only for historic districts, which have no breezeways, but also for all Athens residential districts. This is going to take over the whole area. Everybody's got an easy workaround to put another structure back there. They were shocked, in fact, and that's why I'm here tonight. My personal experience as a child of 5 or 6, home alone after school with my sister, 18 months older, had an adult stranger walk into our house. We shrieked, and unfortunately that caused him to bolt out the door. He tripped. Just by luck, a policeman was in our block and physically apprehended and subdued him. All of our neighbors were shocked as well. Unforgettable for sure, but this has already happened related to the very house we're discussing. A house exactly a block away at 120 Cloverhurst Place had an Airbnb stranger try to access the house via the front and rear doors, apparently mistaking the address and street for that very house pending your approval. Fortunately, no access was accomplished, as they have 2 elementary children, a boy and a girl. I was not advised if the entry was attempted at night or if there was any impairment involved, but the consequences could have been severe, either the intruder or the children. The law of unforeseen circumstances that things will happen that weren't foreseen. Don't let breezeways become a dodge for easier approval and larger accessory structures. Require the traditional process for accessory structures and no exterior stairs or second-story party deck overlooking my kitchen and living space directly visible from Bloomfield Street. And I think you saw that on the chart. People on Bloomfield Street are going to see his party deck jutting out and over my house.
Thank you, Mr.
Respect
Cotton. Thank you, sir.
existing HPC guidelines and the people who actually live here. Thank you very much for your attention.
I'm back.
Good evening.
This is why I came. I'm Marilyn Vickers at 197 Witherspoon Court. The first time I heard about this property on Cloverhurst, and I know a number of people who live there in the area, in the Bloomfield area. This was at the September 12th special commission meeting. I heard then that the Atlanta owner wanted eventually to move his family back here. It was approved, it had been approved by the Historic Preservation Committee out of planning, and at that point, we weren't allowed to discuss zoning. We really thought there were zoning issues because this is an RS district. So now we're here about zoning. In October, I was at a meeting at the library discussing the comprehensive plan. And at that meeting, the ACC manager, Blaine Williams, talked about the history of zoning and the purposes of it. And there were 2 things that I really came away from that with. One is that there should be predictable use of adjacent land, adjacent things that are going on properties. And second, that there should be some uniformity of lot development and a compatibility. And I think particularly so in a historic district. But as Mr. Totten pointed out, this applies to all of Athens. I feel as though this proposal for 220 West Cloverhurst fails on both of those aspects. And I think the neighbors who live in that area who are here tonight, that is what they are telling you. So I hope this is denied. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
You
Vickers.
need another one of these.
Is there anyone else here this evening to speak to Cloverhurst? All right, this is in District 10, so I'll kick it off to Commissioner Hamby.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. And Ms. Vickers is right. Last time we weren't allowed to talk about the zoning or the use, just the architecture. Now we're here tonight to talk about the use and a special use at that. I'm hard pressed to think, and I do worry about the precedence of this. I mean, obviously my thoughts on this I think are known. I didn't support it when it came through the HPC appeal. I'm not going to be supporting it for this special use request. It is an odd request. I mean, I'm hard pressed to think of, when we've had a special use request to change something that's non-conforming to conforming. So I do think we need to be a bit careful in the precedent we set for this, from that regard, because it is, it's a Bruce, correct me if I'm wrong, but since I've been on the commission, I don't remember ever having heard of a special use request of this nature. I've heard of one for fraternities and sororities and such as that, but.
Yeah, they are infrequent. I would agree with that.
Right. And just, and so we have to look at our special use conditions and special use things that I think Attorney Drake can help us with. But I do think the precedence of what we would be setting here would impact Bloomfield, but other neighborhoods as well. And Bloomfield's changing. I mean, it's a lot of single-family residents moving over there, and people are trying to make their homes there. So it's be curious as to what y'all's thoughts are, but I am worried about the precedents that we're going to be setting.
Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I am curious, Bruce, why bother going through this process? Existing non-conforming duplexes are all over the place in our RS neighborhoods. What would this allow this property owner to do if it were to be approved? That's other than what's already been approved through the HPC.
Yeah. The reason for this request coming forward is the expansion of the existing legal non-conforming use. If the use were not expanding, they could continue the legal non-conforming duplex use uninterrupted.
Okay, so the breezeway accessory dwelling garage thing is what's triggering the need for it to actually get approved as a conforming use.
The living space on the second floor of the new garage structure is the expansion of the legal non-conforming use.
If the applicant had not done a breezeway and gotten an accessory structure approved,
right,
would they have to go through this process?
If, without the connection to say that this was an addition to that existing structure, it would be a detached structure, could not be considered an expansion of a duplex. And at that point, it would be the introduction of a wholly new use that is not allowed by the zone at all.
So, because we do allow accessory structures in our RS neighborhoods up to a certain 800 square feet. And we don't necessarily govern the use of those as long as they don't have, stoves in them and are dedicated.
Yeah, it's the independent living facility aspect of that that would
so
make it
they're
legally
clearly
non-conforming.
declaring that this is an independent.
No, they are not. They are not. The part of this application is only an expansion of that second, the half of the existing duplex.
Okay, so it's basically saying this is an expansion of the back end of the second union of the
That's the
duplex.
request, yes.
Okay. I'm with Mike, I was baffled as to why HPC approved this based on just design elements alone. I felt like it did not conform to the existing historic home. And, you don't regularly see those breezeways. And yeah, the HPC just denied another breezeway accessory structure. Also, I was looking at section 920-5 of the code as Ms. Totten brought it up, and if you go through those criteria, this violates most of them, when you consider the property's history as an Airbnb party house. Certainly number 5, the generation of noise, light, and glare, when you have an upper level deck hovering right over a property line in a close neighborhood like this, you're certainly going to get noise and light and glare onto other properties. I'm working with an applicant now who's proposing an upzone, and one of the conditions that I'll be putting on it is no upper floor balconies. That's a big concern. At the very least, if this were to get approved, I would ask that upper level back patio or whatever be removed. But there are plenty of other criteria here that arguably this is in violation of, and given the history as a Airbnb party house, and the volume of traffic and parking issues are certainly part of it too. The whole project kind of gives me pause, and I'm still baffled as to how it passed HPC muster just from design aspects. I mean, I have some academic background in that kind of thing, and it really flustered me.
Commissioner Thornton.
I think Commissioner Link said everything I was going to say, but probably she said more because I'm confused now. But did I hear that another area, Woodhaven, had a Woodlawn was denied? So that's correct, right? So
What has been referenced was an HPC action from last evening
Uh-huh.
about a breezeway connection between an approved garage structure and an existing home on Woodlawn. But that's what they're talking about. It doesn't involve a special use, doesn't involve a duplex. It was
Okay.
just the breezeway aspect was
Okay.
denied last
Okay,
night.
so that's the clarity there, okay.
Yep.
No, I'm pretty much agreeing with Commissioner Hamby also. And we'll see how it goes, but thank you for explaining that to me.
I just want to point out one thing, and thank Commissioner Link. The factors that the commission need to be focusing on making this decision are found in section 9-20-5 of the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia. Those relate to the zoning factors that can be, that controls the issuance or denial of a special use permit. So, encourage you to focus on those factors and also read if you haven't already, remind you that John Hawkins, an attorney in our office, sent a memo outlining those factors that you can look at.
Okay.
It's important to take a look at that email if you haven't had a chance to related to this.
Thanks, Attorney Drake. Appreciate it. Commissioner Houle.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two questions, one for staff, one for the applicant, I think. The first is just for staff. Are there breezeways akin to what's being proposed here on other adjacent or nearby lots in the historic district?
There are a couple things that are unique about this particular site, one being that it's a corner lot. So if you were to run an analysis of other corner lots and breezeways, you may have to go several blocks before you see some sort of hyphen or connector between the original form of a house and an addition at its rear. But they do exist throughout this area and in-town neighborhoods.
Okay. And then I guess, my initial response to this is, this is creating some kind of small-scale density, kind of infill thing that's kind of good. We need more places for people to live. And it seems like concerns of residents center on the property being used as a short-term rental more than like a long-term rental. And I heard the applicant speak in the Planning Commission meeting saying something effective, Airbnb is not happening here. But of course, we're hearing from residents that it is. So can the applicant speak to, if he wishes, if and how Airbnb is being used and how it will be used in the future?
This duplex has been used for long-term rentals for a portion of it. So obviously, as a duplex, there's two living areas. One of the portions of the duplex is also a second home for the owner of the property. He has on occasion rented it out to people he knows for perhaps a ball game or something along that line. But basically, he uses it because he comes to Athens for various times to enjoy Athens. His family, his parents live here, his sister lives here. So they come frequently and so it's really a second home that happens to be a duplex. But the other part of the duplex is long-term rentals. It's being managed by a local real estate company. And so it's not a constant short-term rental.
But it is used as a short-term rental at times.
Only some part for only the part of the duplex that the owner in Atlanta has let a friend or somebody like that rent it out, or somebody that he knows, or somebody that's made a recommendation to them. So, I mean, on occasion, but it is not a regularly used VRBO or short-term rental.
Okay.
Does that cover everything, Commissioner Gould?
It does. I guess I'm just confused. Thank you. What confuses me about that response is if I look up the property on Airbnb, I see the owner who spoke at past meetings, listed as the agent who has it up on Airbnb, and I see a bunch of reviews that it has been used. Not with super frequency maybe, but it's certainly been used on Airbnb for years, and I assume if somebody's using Airbnb and paying part of what they get on there to corporation of Airbnb, they're probably doing that because they don't know the folks. Otherwise, they just, have an agreement with their pal. So that part of this whole discussion confuses me, I will say.
Commissioner Hamby?
Sure. I'll just go back to what Attorney Drake and Commissioner Link have said. Go look at the conditions for what constitutes a special use, and ask yourself, does this meet all of those criteria, or does it not meet the criteria? And I think it'll become pretty clear at that point in time about what's expected and how it's used as an Airbnb, with friends or without friends on Airbnb, and the breezeway connection. I will say for the breezeway connections, I'm hard pressed I'm trying to picture going down Bloomfield and some other areas where a breezeway might be part of the structure. And I would say that if it is part of the structure, then it's probably not being utilized as a duplex. It's more of a single family home in nature from that regard, and it's probably not in a historic district. Thank you.
Commissioner Myers, and then back to Commissioner.
Yeah, I'm kind of going back to basics on this, and promise I will review it more closely, the technical and the legal details of this. But I just want to, Mr. Lonnie, if you help me out here, from what I've heard tonight and what's here, it's very simple. The breezeway allows this back portion to be considered as, in a sense, as an extension of the back duplex. So it's really being not moved into, theoretically, into 3 units, but 2 units as they were, and the other one is a breezeway. As if I put a little breezeway, like I built a breezeway and put a room out there. If I did that in my yard, just to understand this, that would not, as Commissioner Link has referred to, that would not be considered an auxiliary dwelling? So I could use up a lot more space that way, or what?
So if, the way our code is set up, if you have a connection, a roof line connection, much like a breezeway, that is no longer than 15 feet in length, you can connect an accessory structure, and it's no longer accessory. It's considered in addition to the main residence. As far as independent living quarters, we would still fall on the other code readings and interpretations about having separate kitchen facilities. And so it's my understanding that the living space in this new garage structure that's upstairs would have no independent cooking facilities.
Okay. And the reason then this would become confirming, what's my word?
Conforming.
Thank you, versus non-conforming is because the existing carport line would no longer be so close to the edge of the property, and it would conform to standards that are in place right now?
So maybe this is a good point to describe the 2 ways that something can be non-conforming.
Yeah.
And one of the speakers referenced this in 915.8. There's a section that talks about structure, and there's a section that talks about use.
Right.
So if we had a non-conformity related to structure, that would be something, perhaps lot coverage or setbacks or building height. Those things you would seek a variance to find relief. But if you have a use that is non-conforming, in this case a duplex in a single-family zone, the path for finding relief and making those conforming is to go through the special use process. And so in this instance, nothing about what's being proposed to be developed, as Mr. Matheny stated, needs a variance. Nothing is encroaching into a setback, nothing is going beyond what the development regulations would allow in terms of structural form. But what is needing to be dealt with is the use of the property as a duplex in a single-family zone. And our reading of the code is that when you add to that nonconformity, expanding the living space of that duplex, the only remedy to allow that to occur is to come through the special use process.
Because otherwise you wouldn't be able to do it because it's non-conforming.
That is correct.
Fun.
Commissioner Link, and then back to Commissioner Hamby.
So what clinches it for me in seeing that this is not a mere expansion of one living space, i.e. the back end, the second unit of the duplex, the back duplex unit, is the fact that the entrance to this living space, this upper story living space, is all the way around this other side of the building. If this was an actual expansion of a living space that was sharing the living space with that back duplex unit, why not have the entrance adjacent to the main structure? Why not have that upper level deck outside the window facing over the house? I think that's what really clinches it to me, that this is actually an application for a triplex, not a duplex. And there are a whole lot of reasons to allow duplexes in single-family neighborhoods. But right now, we don't, and we're going through a code process whereby we might implement some, real regulation to that. That might have something like no upper story decks. But it's just very clear to me that what they're asking for is allowing a triplex instead of the long existing duplex. And if they really truly want to merely expand the living space of the current unit, then why not put that entryway facing inward on that unit?
Return to Commissioner Hamby, then we'll move on to the text amendments.
Sure, I'll just be real brief, and it's just more of a technical thing, probably for Mr. Bellani or Mr. Drake, and it deals with the historic tax freeze. So when you go to non-conforming to conforming, does that now also mean that they'll be able to get the historic tax freeze?
One of the criteria to participate in the tax freeze is that your property be conforming with local zoning, and approval of the special use for this expansion would render them conforming. So that would be an obstacle that would be removed to participating in the tax freeze.
Which, if y'all see where I'm going, opens the door to more of these coming through for historic districts, for special use requests in historic districts to allow for it going from non-conforming to conforming so that they can get the property tax freeze. So, again, there's a lot of precedents going on here.
So
and
they get
that's
a
one of
triplex plus a tax break.
Exactly.
All right, we have 3 text amendments tonight, and we're going to take each one at a time, public input as well. Commissioner Davenport, did you have a note about the fire?
Can Melissa Link just repeat what she said about do you mind?
I don't mind at all, because it is complicated. As Mr. Lonnie explained, this request is for an expansion of the existing duplex unit. And that instead of being an accessory structure, it's considered an expansion because it's linked to the duplex through that 15 feet of breezeway. But if it's an expansion of that living space, why isn't the entrance to that new living space adjacent to the living space it's expanding upon? Instead, it's all the way around the back with the stairwell and upper level deck overlooking the back neighbor's house.
On the image on the screen, the upper left corner is the connection into it's that breezeway. There is a doorway into the existing house. It goes under the enclosed sleeping porch at the rear of the existing house. So that is the doorway into the back half of the duplex. The front half is accessed from the front porch. So the breezeway is the connection into the new garage structure. That is the connection to the back half of the duplex. But your point, Commissioner Link, is about the 12 by 8 deck at the rear with the stairs.
The entry into the living space is all the way around the back. I mean, maybe they could put an entry within the garage up to the living space, but it doesn't appear that they're doing that. It appears that this is definitely intended to be a separate living space, separate from the back end unit of the duplex.
Okay.
Is that clear to you, Commissioner?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
All right, number 9.
Okay, thank you. We had 3 text amendments on the Planning Commission agenda, and they were all recommended for approval. I'll go through them fairly quickly. I'm happy to answer any questions on them as a group. Is that fair?
Yeah, let's do that. We'll do them as a group, and then if there's any public input, we can take that as a group as well.
Very good. Okay. The first text amendment is to alter our code to accommodate actually some state statute that was adopted dealing with what occurs when a state agency is improving a public road, and if that part of that improvement project happens to remove land from an existing development that leaves them non-compliant with local development standards, what we're putting together is an administrative waiver tool that would allow for the planning director to consider the state agency's action as a hardship to grant a waiver for that non-compliance. So it's essentially something that's out of the control of the property owner by action of a state agency for local road construction, and it's only for local road construction. Item 10, when we brought forward an amendment to our airport overlay zones a while ago, one of the things that we were trying to achieve, and we did this in cooperation with the airport authority, was to allow for single-family dwellings to be constructed in the airport overlay. They were very comfortable with that. They found it to be a low enough density that there was not a safety issue. Inadvertently, we left 913.4B and C2 unchanged, and it was at odds with that text amendment. And so this cleans up what we started a while ago that would very clearly allow for single-family dwellings to be built by right in the airport approach and the transition overlay zones. And the third one was to address, frankly, some language in our code that was dated. Commercial storage uses have changed in 25 years. We have a lot of fulfillment centers, and we have a lot of sorting and packaging and real-time distribution of products. And that's a very common thing with online ordering and customer service. So by and large, what we are doing with that last text amendment is adding definitions to Chapter 9-2, and then we've amended the use tables for each of the applicable zones where we want these new uses to be either allowed or allowed with some level of restriction. So we have some text amendments that will show those new uses hitting the table with new status for how we would handle those. Happy to answer any questions.
Is there any member of the public who'd like to speak to any of the text amendments? All right, it does not invigorate the public. Does it invigorate any member of the commission? Would any member of the commission like to?
Just one technical definition. So warehouses is not the same as storage units, or could it be?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. Self-storage, is that what you're getting at?
Yes.
Yeah, so self-storage is its own use category, separate from warehousing. It has its own definition.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right. Bruce, go safely into the night. Thank you, sir. All right, I'm going to relocate, and we will take up old and new business.
Mr. Mayor, can we take a quick break? Is this a good time for a break?
Would members of the body like to do a break?
5 minutes?
Sure.
It'll be fine.
All right, we'll do 8 minutes. We'll be back at 7:50. Old and new business.
Fill me up.
So now's the time we have public input on any of those items. And so tonight, old and new business are items 3 and then 12 through 34. Would any member of the public like to speak to any of those items? 3 and 12 through 34. It's the bulk of the agenda. And just let us know your name, place of residence, and the item to which you're speaking.
Okay, thank you. How y'all doing? Commissioners, mayor, and everybody that's affiliated with this prestige organization, community. My name is Ricky Willis. I live at 140 Julia Ann Circle, Athens, Georgia 30606. I'm speaking on the CNC grant proposal. I'm the founder and the owner of, the founder of About Face International Corporation, and what we are, we're a reentry program. We help people through practitioners like therapists, social workers, peer support, and we go to the job with them. You know, it's a 12-month program, whereas if we have GED, just a plethora of things that we do that we offer to the community. I have a gentleman that's going to come out on the 5th of December that we service, and that's doing great things in the community and because of About Face. And so I'm just asking that you will listen to our plea, and we're here to serve in the community and make it better, be a pillar in the community, because there are a lot of hurting people. And I too once was incarcerated. I served a time for a crime that I didn't commit. And with that being said, you know, when I was in prison, God gave me a vision of About Face and showed me why the incarceration was increasing, crime was increasing. Just so much. It just showed me a lot, you know, and I studied. Today I stand before you. I went in with a cosmetology degree. I'm a barber cosmetologist, I own the salon. But today I stand before you as a person that has a bachelor's or master's and currently working on my PhD in organization leadership. And we're just ready to serve and just help people, because change is possible, because you're looking at change. So if you could please just approve our proposal. Again, the name of our organization is called About Face. It's your organization because it's a community organization, and we're here to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, with no other members of the public in the chamber, we're going to come to discussion. And Commissioner Houle, you asked that 3, the Byrne Justice Assistance Grant, be removed from the agenda, so we'll begin with you for that.
Yeah, question for staff, and I'll send it's been a dense week, so I have not gotten my questions written up in advance, but I'll try to get them to y'all soon here in writing. But I'd love to get some information on, just like looking at the past year, data on arrests resulting from the work of the Drug Task Force, and what those people that were arrested were charged with, and then also related data on the outcomes in the courts resulting from those arrests. So like, was it a plea bargain or a trial? Were people acquitted or convicted? That'd be helpful for understanding what this grant funds a specific activity within our police department, and then that, Drug Enforcement Task Force, what kind of outcomes are we seeing from that Drug Enforcement Task Force? So.
Manager Williams, that material staff's able to pull together in the follow-up report?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I guess I'd ask to keep it off consent, just awaiting that information, but thank you.
All right, we're going to move on now to a couple items of old business. Item 12 was a previously heard zoning item for 1125 Newton Bridge Road. And Commissioner Thornton, any additional notes about this beyond what we talked
No,
about last
I
month?
am working with the attorney's office, and Brad has been assisting also, working with the developer. So we'll be making a presentation next meeting.
Manager Williams?
Yes, sir, thank you. And I'd like to call your attention to agenda item number 34, which is related to,
Oh, yeah.
and I'd like to say a few words, but Commissioner Thornton, did you?
No, no, go for it.
Okay. Well, and if appropriate, I think that when we recast the agenda, that if we could vote on the lift station first before the zoning, because they're obviously interdependent. And we've had this for some time. We've held it until the zoning came up, and it didn't come together at the last meeting. So I appreciate you holding it, Commissioner Thornton. But we do have it, and so basically, and then maybe we kill two birds with one stone. I have to talk about 34 later. So we are a gravity system, and if you want to add a pump station, you have to get the Mayor and Commission's approval. And where this is situated, they're gonna have to, get a pump station, so you're being asked to approve that as number 34. And then a few years ago, there was sort of an added requirement, if you will, from the commission that there would be solar to power the backup generator for the lift station in case it went down. So there's a protocol around that and a deposit by the developer, and all that's in the agenda item. But those two are related, so don't forget that.
And I think that's why we postponed both, because they are related. And so hopefully we'll have, maybe you're right, probably do that one first, but in conjunction. That'd be fine.
Any other new notes on 12, Commissioner?
And I might be, I think I mentioned this before about the pump station. I think I recommended that we go ahead, maybe several months ago when we was looking at this project, to go ahead and vote on this pump station to, get it out there. And I'm not sure what happened. I know I remember bringing that up. I said, hey, maybe we should do that first before we look at the development. So again, I just can't, I know several months ago I mentioned about doing that.
I'll just reorder the agenda so we do that.
Okay. You want to explain that? Okay.
Or you go ahead.
No, go for it.
Well, generally, in the past, and we haven't had a lot of these, we haven't allowed a whole bunch of pump stations for big residential developments for a couple reasons. We went a long time without a lot of new residential developments. We had some smaller pump stations that generally get added, a new gas station, a smaller private pump station. So this came up, and Commissioner Fisher, I guess our experience has been, since sometimes these planning issues evolve, and the discussion in the community, we usually try and have those two decisions, approximate to each other once you've got all the details, because one's going to enable the other, right? And so we could have voted on it before, but I think there's been a lot of conversation about this particular zoning case.
Yeah, now that it refreshed my memory, I think one reason I did bring it up was because regardless of whether or not this development was going to move forward, possible something was going to get developed out there eventually. I just thought that sort of made sense to maybe go ahead and do that first.
But there's some dollars attached with the developer for the pump station.
Okay.
That's why. So if we have to, if the project rezoning fails, then we have to back up and look back at the dollars for the pump station.
I would anticipate that if that was the case, they would simply not initiate that ultimate agreement with public utilities.
That's exactly right.
Commissioner Myers.
I'm a little confused. Are we continuing discussion of the pump station now, or should I wait till 34?
If you'd like to dive into the pump station, given how conjoined they are, by all means.
Yeah, I would, I'm looking at number 7 and 8, I think, of the facts that I've just looked at, so I haven't spent that much time with it. But I know this was a discussion among the planning commissioners, talking about the long-term upkeep and maintenance of the pump station, and how the developer is responsible for paying $300 for the first 20 years of operation. But then 8 says, and this is where I'd like to request that if you all can give us anything more, and maybe it's a 9 and 10 for all I know, but the financial burden imposed on ratepayers to maintain and operate the pump station is somewhat mitigated by the $300,000 deposit. The deposit was only calculated and that's for 20 years. So if there's any further information on the somewhat mitigated.
I can answer that.
Okay.
Well, I just want to, so the commission, and of course, it wasn't this particular set of people that made those decisions, but, you know, if you ask me, I'd rather not own pump stations, because gravity doesn't fail. Pump stations do. And the commission was the one that moved us into a posture of taking ownership of these because of the concern, and the basic question at the time was, well, if this pump station stops working, who does it fall on to fix? And we said, well, it'd be the HOA or whatever. And if they didn't have an HOA, then, you know, the developer. And I think there was concern with the commissioners at the time that, well, that could become a public health emergency, so we really should be in charge of it. So that's kind of how we got into that posture. Right. And so it's true, though, that the upkeep of, well, I'll ask staff to clarify on the follow-up report, but I think that the maintenance of it would outstrip the rates paid by that particular neighborhood with respect to the entire operation plus the maintenance and upkeep of that. So the other ratepayers will subsidize this to some degree, which is why we asked for an offset to begin with.
Right, and after the 20 years, which goes by awfully quickly.
It does, doesn't it?
You know, then it would be to the county. So looking at that long-term impact is helpful. And so would this change, does this mean that there aren't sewer lines out there? And I mean, there are sewer lines, but we have to have this pump station to get the lines to the...
So if I don't know how familiar y'all are, but there is sewer at Holland Park, but
Okay.
everything like the Estes Truck Corporation, the current food boat location, all that is down gradient. And so in order, and for instance, the old version of the food bank had asked to tie into our sewer system, and they would have had to have a pump up the hill to Holland Park. So there is not sewer, or there's not gravity sewer out Newton Bridge Road out that far.
Now, as a community, you know, again, with this future, what are we working on now? This future
land use map.
land use map, but we're at the growth map right now, and then the future land use. Might one decide as a community to do something in terms of, like, beforehand as a community in terms of the sewage and the development out there? I mean, like, if we decided that was the greatest place in the world, could we as a community, and we wanted to develop more out there with housing and such, and be at the front end of that, what would we be doing? Would we still be would we still be having to put pumps in there as well?
Well, so what has traditionally been done in the design is that, and it's really simple, although it seems very complex, but, you know, water runs downhill. So what we would do would be to find the closest creeks or branches that feed the main tributary, and we would run sewer lines along or near those that would fall towards the river and then down towards the various waste treatment plants. That is a general approach. Obviously, it would depend on the situation and the topography, but I will say I was amazed when I came here to find out that the entire sewer system is gravity, with the exception at the time of one pump station, and that was at Weatherly Woods out near Winterville. And I've just not heard of that. So that, yeah.
And along that line, since I'm getting so much into this here, if we had the sewage experts here, would they be telling you, oh, look, we could go into this place and we could do this with still running gravity lines here or here? Is that all sort of planned out from their perspective, or do they have thoughts on that where?
No, I don't think there's like a master plan that's yet unbuilt. I can ask. There are certainly areas that aren't served. You know, on the water side, we've done a really good job of just basically every public road's got a water line on it of varying sizes. But with sewer, there's been some concerns, you know, particularly in the Sandy Creek Basin. We've talked about that a lot. And now we're starting to hear with the future land use map, folks equating certain types of infrastructure with impending development that we need to be, you know, cognizant of. But I don't believe there's an overall sewer master plan, but I'm sure our staff, if you talk about a specific area of the county, they can probably quickly route something there in their mind.
I mean, maybe the closest corollary is that we've got a service delivery plan through public utilities that this body has to approve recurrently. And that often features sewer line extensions, meaning that the line is longer, and then expansions, meaning the line has more capacity. And so we have some of those that have been underway even in recent years, not too far from here. There's a line that will be reaching sort of the Cathwood and inner Newton Bridge area that's capacity expansion, for example. So these two things do interplay, and I'm going to talk in somewhat science fiction-like terms, but in a very aggressive posture. Public utilities could say, well, we need a new treatment facility that has outfall on Sandy Creek or on the Middle Oconee River. So, if we were to think 50 or 80 years down the road, those kinds of things could eventually become possibilities, mitigating the need for any lift station in this subbasin. Let me get a few others, and then I'll return to you, Commissioner Houle.
Yeah, because item 34 is title only, right? Or you said item 34 is the pump station?
34 is the lift
It
station.
now it's now more than title only.
There's
Okay.
approval.
It's on the
There's an-
version that.
There's an agenda item now.
Okay.
Yeah, we got to update it.
Okay. So, sorry, I haven't had a chance to review that yet.
You and me both.
I guess what would be helpful for me to understand is the type of pump station, like the size of it, is relevant to the project that's going in.
Yes.
Right? So I'm curious why we would approve the pump station first, given that. I would think we would discuss whether or not we want this type of a project to happen before we would approve the pump station that would allow it to move forward. And then probably if we do approve the rezone, it's sort of a foregone conclusion to just do the pump station, because we're kind of understanding that that's part of what would be required to see that forward.
Well,
Especially because it seems like the more likely debate to happen among the community and among this body is probably the overall project, with the pump station being one element of that debate. So I guess I'm just curious why we wouldn't actually do the rezone first.
Well, once you vote to rezone it, it's rezoned. And then if you immediately after that refuse the
Decide
pump
you don't.
station, then it's a zone that doesn't work.
But I guess I think we all understand that, but if we approve the pump station first,
Then
I guess it seems.
that applicant or another applicant would have to go through the entire process just to change the rezoning on something that can't work without the pump station. So it's an enabling thing, and then and hopefully by the time we get to that, you've got some sense of your vote. Obviously you need to hear the public opinion and keep your mind open, but we'll do whatever. It's just procedurally, it's going to be very difficult if you vote yes on the zoning and no on the pump station.
Conceptually, one may say, if you approve the pump station, you recognize this as an area for denser development than it currently exists.
With the pump station.
But then you could deny the rezoning, suggesting that this particular development is not of the sort that meets the needs of the community. So, it's a little chicken or eggish, but I think we'll probably get through both agenda items. That's my suspicion. Commissioner Link?
I have a couple of questions. I mean, first of all, couldn't the mayor just move these items on the agenda to ensure that the pump station goes through a vote before?
That's what you
Okay.
see.
I also, regarding the future growth map and the idea of maintaining a pump station, would it run afoul of state law if we were to start adding fees onto properties that were served by these pump stations that we might maintain? Would that be a way of taking care of this issue, to assure that other ratepayers aren't necessarily subsidizing something that doesn't serve them? Could we? Yeah, I mean, that might be an ordinance we might want to look into.
Well, and it could be a special service district or something along those lines, Attorney Drake. So it's quite possible we can look into that and respond in the follow-up report.
Yeah, and as far as the overall project, I mean, this is the second time it's been before us, and, I'll continue to be opposed because I just feel like it's the same kind of homogeneous sprawl that has kind of gotten us into some of the problems we're into, where, you don't have a whole lot of services and commercial entities serving these, dozens and dozens and dozens of family homes. There's a lot of isolation going on, and that's where a lot of suburban poverty happens. I really, in that future growth process, I really would love to see us come up with a new subdivision ordinance that incorporates some kind of commercial amenities that is meant to directly serve the people who are actually possibly living there and the surrounding community.
Commissioner Thornton?
No, I was going to say about Commissioner Fisher's comment. The whole pump station concept, like Manager Williams said, was before my
tenure.
Well, before in this district.
Oh, okay.
So the pump station conversation has been going on for a while. So, but it was before I was commissioner in that area. So I'm just picking it up from where we are now. I do think that housing is necessary. We got to start somewhere. That's just the bottom line. And I'm going to try to address, if I cannot address most of the concerns that I heard, but some of it was outright wrong, I'm going to try to address these concerns that I heard. But I do want to say that some of the information was incorrect, and I think that even some of the questions that came from my fellow commissioners, I thought was a bit inappropriate. But I'm going to do my best to continue to work with Brad and the attorney's office and the developer, because we need housing. The biggest thing I fussed about was how much it costs, how much houses cost. But when I looked at Zillow myself, those are the ranges. That's it. But the other things that came up, I thought was inappropriate, some of it, but the things that I can address, I'm going to try to address at the next meeting, and we'll just see where it goes, if that's okay.
All right, we of course have another item of old business that was originally a zoning item, and that is Bray Street. Commissioner Link, any update on this item?
Yes, I've been in communication with the developer the past couple of weeks, and we had a really good meeting with the adjacent homeowners whose homes face on Cannon Drive, and are literally like 15 feet from the property line of this parcel that is requesting the rezone. So we met to discuss possible conditions to assure that the upzoning of this property, and with the assumption that the developer will also take advantage of our inclusionary zoning ordinance and get a little bit more density on the property. But we want to assure that it doesn't negatively impact those homeowners whose properties are adjacent. So I'll be putting some conditions that includes a little bit of an enhanced buffer, the required 6-foot fence, as well as an additional bit of planting, and an assurance that the structure that is adjacent to those homes conforms to the height restrictions that are currently on the property, the 25-foot height restrictions. There were some concerns about lighting, a request for native and evergreen species, to assure that that buffer is year-round. It is a difficult lot. This is also a lot that has some sewer line access issues. It falls from where the sewer line, so the developer will have to come to an agreement with nearby property owners to access the sewer line on a different street frontage. But we had a really productive conversation, and we also had a conversation with Athens Land Trust, who owns the land that those houses are on. And they were thankfully they are active in the neighborhood and were able to put me in touch with those property owners. And they are interested in working with the developer and maintaining some kind of community garden or green space on the property. The lot is kind of flag-shaped. It has very narrow street frontage, but opens up and back, and so it's not very developable at the street frontage, and that would be an ideal space for a community amenity to serve the broader neighborhood. So we're talking about that as a condition. And I'll be having a conversation with Planning Director Griffin tomorrow to talk about some details of the lighting ordinance to assure that any of the lighting of the new project does not spill onto adjacent properties. You know, we just had this discussion about this addition in 5 Points, that it has a upper level balcony. And that's one of the conditions I'll be putting on as well, is no upper level balconies overlooking those Cannon Street properties.
Any further input? Commissioner Thornton?
Yes, I was expecting to hear from Commissioner Link from the last meeting about Bray Street, but I'm still waiting to hear from you because I would like to be a part of that conversation. And I'd like to, and this is directed to, I guess, the mayor, if this development happens, would this be part of the TAD for North Avenue?
I'd have to look at the TAD map
It's in
to
it.
It
be
is?
certain whether it's in or not. It is in the TAD. Okay.
That's what that's what we've determined.
So I would also suggest then that I had identified 5 or 6 people to serve on that TAD committee. Maybe Commissioner Link would like to recommend, if it's okay, for someone to serve on that TAD, since she has that part of the TAD. But we could talk about that later.
Yeah, we've already initiated that, and just in terms of process, of course.
Okay.
Public knows that should some TAD funds be desired, you know, those would route through that group, and so they would make application through our economic department. That hearing would be had by the group first, and then would flow to us.
Yeah, I mean, there is, you know, concern about increased traffic, and Bray Street is a weird little street in that it's very narrow, and there's a sharp 90-degree turn in it where there's like, I mean, I almost hit someone head-on going in there to this meeting. There's certainly a need for some traffic calming, some speed bumps, and some sidewalks. I mean, there's county-owned property on Bray Street that has no sidewalk. And yes, there is a lot of activity around there. You've got the homeless shelter apartments there. You've got a lot of affordable housing apartments, land trust land, you know, the day services center. There's a lot of pedestrian activity through that neighborhood, and it definitely could use some of that TAD money for some pedestrian accommodations and some traffic calming, speed bump type thing.
Well, I definitely want to follow back up. I think that Commissioner Fisher and I, we communicate back and forth about the Newton Bridge project because we connect. And I don't see how you and I can't be conversation because they connect. And because that, I think that it helps us get a round of, so I'm glad you're doing as much as you're doing. I just would like to be a part of the conversation. And I do think the TAD would be, is going to bring some value for a development like that.
I'll fill you in on the conversation.
Talk online. All right, we had, of course, another piece of old business, and that was the paint crew pilot program. Any input on this?
Consent.
I guess I'm just still awaiting we had some questions before that led to this being held. I mean, do we have answers for those already? If so, probably be happy to put it on consent, but.
No, we'll have to have that in the follow-up report.
I guess I'd ask to keep it off then until we have those answers. That's okay.
All right, moving on to new business. 15 is the proposed revisions and updates to TPW engineering and design technical standards, as we saw a couple days ago in the work session. Any input on
Move to
this?
consent.
Everybody okay with consent? All right. 15 is consent. All right. 16 is revisions to the stormwater utility ordinance. Of course, you see the financial model as well as the modification in kind of those 3 areas. Commissioner Link?
Yeah, we had some communication from former Commissioner Carl Jordan about potential language that we might want to think about incorporating into this that kind of incentivizes property owners to, you know, maintain natural areas for stormwater mitigation on their properties by possibly exempting those areas from some of this fee. I'd like to look into that a little more, maybe talk with staff about how they interpret that, and see if anybody else on this commission is interested in learning more about that.
And you may notice, just if you kind of read the finer points of the code, that there is a new element about infiltration of the first inch of rainfall, exempting fees, and so you may look to see if that satisfies the general intent.
Yeah,
Manager Williams, I don't know if there's any follow-up you want to provide on that piece.
Sure. So, yes, the answer is yes, that we could look at different exemptions, and we are. We can't offer a complete exemption for homeowners because the fee collect supports mandated stormwater management reporting. But with the revisions proposed, staff is now building policies to provide credits or incentives for green and sustainable infrastructure implemented by the homeowner. And this is could be found under the watershed stewardship credit of our code. So yes, we will explore those things. Just from an expectation standpoint, won't be total, but there are some things we think that can be done to help offset the cost, the fee.
Thanks. Commissioner Myers?
Yeah, so that's following up with one point that former Commissioner Jordan made with us about the encouraging the natural green storm way to deal with stormwater. But he also shared with us some wording concerning runoff. I shared with you all about the runoff amounts coming from Clarke County properties, and perhaps you can just address that at a later time, or if you want to address it right now. I think he had language that was any developed parcel for which it can be demonstrated that the post-developed runoff amounts and peak flows for the developed area of the site are not any higher than that associated with a curve number, maybe I'm reading the wrong thing, number 55 in all rain events are exempt from stormwater service charge. So you don't need to respond. You're going to look into it.
On that issue.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Not sure I entirely understand what he means there, but I'm going to provide you some guidance.
We'll work on that.
All right, any further input on this one? All right, there will be some follow-up report on this. I'll leave it off consent. 17 is the Government Operations Committee Unified Leasing Policy Update, something of a simplification of the earlier model. Commissioner Davenport, do you want to address this?
Yes, hopefully we can put this on consent. We worked really hard, and thanks to staff for creating more equitable policy. So what got us here, there were some nonprofits that were paying $1 rents, and there were other nonprofits that were paying what we probably would have considered an exorbitant amount. So what we did was balance the other part. The other issue was that the ACC-owned properties actually cost taxpayers some money because we have to, maintain those buildings, paint, grass, et cetera, et cetera. So equitable balance where we are generating some money to help maintain the facilities and for an equitable market rate based on who's actually profit generating and based on past rents, we came up with this policy. So hopefully you guys can approve it in 2 weeks.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I mean, this has been a struggle. And we definitely, had a need to come up with some equity in these rental agreements, determine the value of each property and, but also understand that these are organizations that certainly have value in the community. And these leases may seem like a lot, but they're like a fraction of market rate. And I know it's going to be a blow to some of these organizations that were paying $1 a year. But the fact of the matter is some of those organizations were paying $1 a year while other organizations were paying near market rents. So, with lots of calculations and 2 rounds trying to deal with this, I think we've come up with something that makes sense and does, it does have some equity, as far as the value of each property, the scale of each property. And, you know, I mean, it does cost a lot to maintain these properties, more and more so in today's economy. And I would argue that, you know, some of these rents don't even approach the maintenance costs for some of these properties. So I feel like we've gotten to a place where we can accept it and agree that it makes sense.
Manager Williams?
Just building on Commissioner Link's point, later on in the cost of recommendation from the property committee, that statistic is in there, and it costs us on average somewhere around $5 a square foot to maintain annually. So when we were doing dollar rents, we were spending much more than that maintaining. And one of the recommendations that staff has proposed to property committee is that maybe we sell some buildings and move on. But that's for another day.
I'll share that back in my life working with high school students, there were certain students who would walk across that graduation stage, and I would think, I can retire now. And when we have put this policy into motion, I feel like I can retire from mayoring a happy person. So.
And if it is approved, it's July 1st.
Yes, yeah, because we've already extended the current lease for the rest of this fiscal year.
For a couple of them, it extends even longer because we have lease agreements for longer than that, yeah.
Consent?
Can I, sure, I just have one question.
Commissioner Houle?
So if I'm reading correctly, it says that this is going to apply to quasi-governmental entities and state agencies as well, and it notes like advantage behavioral in the library system among these. But then I don't see them listed on the additional information comments cost by facility, so.
The
am I
agenda report just
misunderstanding that?
notes that we do lease facilities to some quasi-governmental agencies, and they're in a different category than this.
Okay. Okay, so when it says like this provision extends to it's saying that we're going to still do the dollar rent for those? Is that what's basically going to happen?
They're not dollar.
No?
Those are standalone leases that are separate.
And so the public can hear, because those are standalone leases that are negotiated separately with the quasi-governmentals.
Okay.
With
So they
the
just won't be,
defects,
they
for
won't be
example.
negotiated under this policy at all, is the idea?
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So like the health department, you know,
Okay.
this affects nonprofits and private entities that rent from us.
Okay. Thank you for helping me just understand that better. Consent, fine.
Consent? Consent it is. All right, we're winning tonight. All right, 18 is to approve participants in the nonprofit capacity building program, program that's been long under construction and that we've put out for opportunity. And initial class, what I hope to be the initial class of group has been selected, and hopefully we'll be able to expand this in the future. Any input on this?
I want to pull off consent.
Keep it off consent?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
I got some questions.
Oh,
Anything tonight, or you just want to communicate with the manager later?
I think I need to do it publicly. I'd like to, if that's okay.
Oh, please, yes, yeah. Yeah, I just didn't know if you had your questions prepared now, or
I
if
do.
you, okay.
I do. So, I'm a little confused. You know, back when we were doing our budget, we had put in, the staff had recommended $250,000 for capacity building, and we took that out. I believe, during the budget process. I think we had put that in, and I'm asking a question. You know, you had put in for capacity building initially when we was going through the budget process last year when I was doing the first budget, and we pulled it out.
So my memory's not always great, but
Okay.
what I remember is it was in the mayor's recommended budget.
It was.
And you pulled it out of there.
Right.
But then you put it back in with ARPA funds. Because y'all kind of did a reordering of ARPA funds in the CDO.
Okay.
There was a budget CDO that passed.
Okay.
And we can look into that.
Okay.
I could be wrong.
Okay,
But we'll
so,
look at
and
it.
I guess I got several questions. So, the $200,000 that we're gonna, use for capacity building, and I appreciate that we're trying to help nonprofits, but, shouldn't HCD be doing that capacity building instead of us giving $40,000 to each of these nonprofits to do the capacity building? I see where a module was put together for what they should follow, and that's good, but I don't understand how a nonprofit do their own capacity building without HCD assistance. So I guess my thought process is that $200,000 in my mind would be better spent with HCD doing it than us giving it to the 5 agencies. So just explain, if you could explain the
Sure.
reasoning behind it, that would be helpful to me.
So I'll start with the basic concept, Assistant Manager Jones could follow. So as you pointed out, most of the funds are going to be given to nonprofits to be used in the community. So it's sort of a real-time learning lab. So as they're given money, they're going through these modules. Now, if the commission wants to start a new nonprofit capacity training program, we can either contract that out or we can hire staff to do that. Currently, the staff that we have are supporting the numerous grants and contracts and housing and homeless and those types of activities. So certainly, if the commission would like to go in that direction of having that type of trainer on there, and obviously we can send people through modules all day. I think the innovation here is that we're actually giving them money to spend as they do it. And Nikki, Assistant Manager Jones, please follow up.
That's correct.
So, okay, and that's good and fine, because when we give money to nonprofits, we see it to make an impact on the community. I don't see why they're doing the capacity building will have any impact. It'll have impact on their organization to help them better serve the community. And again, they're just one commissioner.
And just to clarify, those $40,000 are for their service activity. So for example, for the gentleman who spoke, it's for them to run their reentry program.
Not just for admin.
No.
Yeah.
Not just for admin.
Yeah.
And at the same time, they're going to be getting the coaching.
Okay, I didn't read it like that, Mayor, so, okay.
Well, if I could, and this is somewhat anecdotal, but I think staff would verify this experience. I think by the most recent Community Foundation count, there are 550 nonprofits listed on what I think it's called GuideStar. And that doesn't mean they're all operating, but most of them are. A lot of them, we all know some of these folks. They're friends and neighbors. You know, a lot of these are one-person outfits. Certainly as the last iteration and this iteration, the commission has pushed staff to try and make accessible more funds and get folks to the table. We're finding more and more folks they have a big heart, they've got a lot of drive, they just haven't had a lot of experience, they haven't been taught, board governance or financial, compliance or anything like that. So the need was becoming even more clear as we've worked the last few years. And so this is why staff is saying, look, these folks could use some help, and this is a forum that would be interesting.
Okay, well, all right. Again, I think we should be doing this, the government and not the nonprofit, but I'm probably not going to support this, but that's okay.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Davenport.
Just real quick, this started out from CDBG, because we had, excuse me, all these nonprofits applying to CDBG funding, and CDBG funding like HUD and all this stuff, and then our independent agencies, they have their own bucket. So we started this process years ago to say, let's do a nonprofit capacity building, so we can give these startup nonprofits, or some of these nonprofits that don't qualify for the federal, whatever, these criteria. So this is an opportunity for some of these smaller nonprofits who are doing great work to actually receive some funds without going through the hoops. And if I'm incorrect, y'all correct me.
It's a teaching a man to fish approach to nonprofit.
If I could add, as I understand it, one of the things that we've heard quite a bit is from the community is, why do the same folks keep getting the money?
Yeah.
So, this is a way, not the only way, but a way for us to help folks and make things a little more equitable.
And we've seen, and I can name nonprofits that a few years ago just never got a grant because they didn't know how to fill out the things, and staff has worked with them over time, and now they're more effective at it, and we just want to sort of accelerate that for others.
All right, I've got everybody. I'm going to get to everybody. Commissioner Houle?
Thank you, Mayor. Couple things. I mean, first is I feel inclined to support this. I feel like this has been kind of a long time coming. I might end up having some questions for staff just about the way projects were ranked, because I've already had a couple of folks who aren't recommended reach out, so it'd be helpful to be able to understand how to speak to that. But I did just want to note, I know that the budget that we passed was brought up, so I pulled that up, and the way I'm reading it here, the the budget that we ultimately passed with some modifications on the floor, but those were just about the millage rate. It drained the money in ARPA for budget balancing, vaccine incentives that was left over, contingency future needs, and $400,000 from homelessness. So the nonprofit capacity building program was not specified in that CDO that passed. That was the commissioners Hamby, Fisher, and Culpepper sponsored. The other CDO, in case this is where the confusion is coming from, did speak to moving that money out of ARPA, but then specifying paying for it basically. So I think both versions of the budget that passed kept the idea of this program moving forward, just in a slightly different fashion. And yeah, this has been sitting in those like ARPA pro formas that we've gotten for a couple of years now. So I hope that we can move forward on. I think it's going to do a lot of good for the community.
Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I think Commissioner Davenport explained a little bit about the history of this and the need for it, and how it is something that we've been discussing for years, and the real need to enable some of these smaller startup nonprofits that have, you know, kind of micro level entries into certain parts of the community that some of the larger ones might not necessarily. This is going to enable them to expand their services and qualify for more grants, not even local stuff, but this will allow them to reach out beyond, you know, the typical CDBG and home and stuff like that. And also, one thing I noticed in here is that, you know, only a handful of applying agencies actually got the $40,000 grant, but we're allowing 10 to 12 additional ones to audit the training program, meaning they can go through this training. They might not get the money, but this will allow them to get the knowledge. So hopefully they will qualify for money in the foreseeable future. And I on my way over here, I was listening to the radio, and they were giving some statistics on Georgia's unemployment level holding steady. And the statistics noted that the fastest growing sectors of employment in the state of Georgia are healthcare and social services. So these are creating jobs. These nonprofits are creating actual jobs, and we're helping to create entities that will create jobs. You know, and I've brought this up in the past in our partnership with the Chamber of Commerce in workforce development, and the need to create a workforce that can engage in these social services, like assisting unhoused people and assisting with affordable housing and mental health issues. So, you know, this is an economic development issue as well as a social issue.
Commissioner Myers?
Yeah, I look forward to actually reading this agenda report more closely, because there's a wonderful summary of all the nonprofits that submitted applications. And I got the impression that it wasn't that the other nonprofits were necessarily not not good. There weren't good applications. It was just that there was only money for the 5, and that the others were welcome. As a adult educator and someone who's put together curriculum all across the way, I'd lead everyone to look at number 3. The way I see this going on, there's $50,000 for the training and the program itself to run. And it says, as outlined in attachment 3, the CNC Athens program, this capacity for nonprofit capacity building, is a 12-month collaborative learning opportunity that involves ACC Gov Housing and HCD staff, so I assume they're going to be involved, external experts in NPO management and operations, and local nonprofit leaders. And then it goes over the program components. I particularly like that there was a capstone project, so you have to be building in here. The $40,000, I think it's pretty clear in here that the nonprofit can basically use it in their operations and services in whatever way they want. But they, you know, you have these capstone projects, but then when I looked at it more closely, there were also, homework assignments, more or less, in all of these areas that I would assume would get people in terms of doing some of the basic things in financial reporting or planning and putting forward grants. So I think this puts nonprofits in a great opportunity to be moving forward on their own, which I think is the goal of this. There were 12 of these together, and I did have a couple of questions on this. The 12 finalists were narrowed down to the 5 that got the awards. Were there more than 12 applicants, or was it 12 applicants? And then, how many applicants were there total? That's my question. Maybe you can find that. And then,
13 submissions, 1 was disqualified.
okay, so all of them but 1. Now, those people who are the auditors, and this might be too micromanaging, but hopefully if they are willing and able to do the assignments and capstone projects, that we might be willing to work with them. How many people from each organization can attend? Is that up to the organization?
I'm not sure if we've gotten to that level
Got
of
to
detail
level,
yet.
okay, I'm just, excited about that there. And of course, there's deadlines for insurance before the program starts, so I know we've had challenges with these insurance stuff, so hopefully we'll be good and direct and follow through the consequences there. And I didn't have time to read through everything in there. Is there, just in case, again, there's someone who doesn't follow through, come to the workshops, do the work, are we just gonna they all look like great people, so I know this won't happen, but just in case, or in a future year, are there consequences if you don't show up and do the work that's involved?
So for the 12-month period, there's $40,000, and $10,000 would be paid quarterly to each nonprofit. If they stop going to class, if you will, because I think of this as a class, they would not get the funding.
Okay, and that's made clear in our little contract wording and such, good.
I think for the 5, there'll be 2 slots for each of the 5 in the program, and then for the remaining, there'll be 1.
Okay.
And I do need to correct something I said. So these funds can be used in many different ways by the nonprofit, not just service delivery. So it could be personnel costs or administration or things of that nature. So staff corrected me on that.
Yeah, and following up on that, on the logistics of that, if this is a program that we're going to continue as we think about this here, I would feel like if I'm one of those, the ones that didn't get the money this year, I'd be going like, well, should I go to these this year, and attend them because I'm not getting the money, and what if I want to do it next year? So maybe if we have any idea whether or not that there's going to be a second year of this, that might be good to let the others know. We might not know that at this point, so they can make a decision.
I'm certainly already interested in embedding this in the FY25 budget. So, Commissioner Thornton?
It sounds absolutely great when we discuss it. I guess I struggle with the successes that we've had with other things. And I know Manager Blaine thinks, I put him on the spot, and I'm not trying to do that. I would not have supported this early on because, it's here now. If I didn't support it now, I know I'd have 5 organizations ready to hang me outside, and lynch me. But I would not have put $250,000 to this right now. We have so many crises right now, and I know you're going to say some of these nonprofits can help with the crises, but we are, I'm struggling in District 9. I'm just struggling with just basic crap. I can't get a stop sign, a speed bump, or whatever. And my folk are not seeing the bigger picture. So, no, I would not have supported this, but I do see the value in it. And I would surely not plan on putting this in the agenda next year until we see what the outcomes are this year. We do stuff all the time with no outcomes, no follow-up, and then we move on to something else. I'm not going to remind you about some of the stuff that we failed at, but I do like the concept. I think it's doable. My question is now, who is doing these trainings besides the modular? Are we contracting out? Are we having consultants again? See, there's the problem. There's a problem. We got staff that we should figure out. Everything is a consultant. And then we don't even use the ones that are right here in Athens that's probably a lot cheaper. You have the Nonprofit Resource Center in Atlanta. They do trainings on every object you want in a nonprofit. That's why it's called the Nonprofit Resource Center. But you want to put an RFP out instead of looking at what we already have. Now, I want it to be successful. Like I said, I'm going to vote for it because I know there are going to be 5 groups that will hang me if I don't. I know my politics. But we keep doing this consultant stuff and no outcomes. Consultants and no outcomes. So I'm good. Please don't say nothing, Carol, because I can see that look in your face.
Assistant Manager Jones, I think you wanted to outline some of the contours of that training and engagement for outside support.
Certainly, and, Commissioner Thornton, I just want to make sure, we're clear on that. They're going to be trainers and they're outside. However, we're looking at local folks, and we have 5 to 6 quotes.
Well, I hope you remember the disparity study. I hope we get some trainers that look like some of the folk they train.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, if I could speak to, so going to history 18 and 19, so Commissioner Fisher, I was wrong, but I was right. And what I told you did happen, it was a year earlier. So in FY '23, the 250 was put into the ARPA by Commission CDO, not this past budget year. It was the year before, and it's been there the whole time. And staff, of course, has been struggling to get through a lot of these things, and it had finally gotten to a point to where we could move forward with that. So that's the timing of it now.
Okay, and again, that's why I said, we talked about it doing capacity building. Again, and like Commissioner Houle said, we had 2 different CDOs going back and forth with our budget. And I thought we had put it out, and then I see this. I said, okay. But again, that's just my own bias. I think we should be doing that to government. And like Commissioner Thornton said, great program. I'm glad to see our nonprofits getting those funds. But I think we get better bang for the buck if it's coming from us to really help them build their capacity. And that's just something I want to argument. I'm not so much I'm not against them getting the money. It's just the way we put this together. That's all.
Commissioner Taylor?
I feel like Manager Williams listens to me when I say stuff now, only because I've been saying this since I guess I decided to run. Being a founder and a director of a nonprofit, I know the more downs than up of navigating the nonprofit world and also applying for grants and having a big heart and the goal to want to change your community. I know that there are logistics that not all of us, agree with, but I am really excited. I know all of these nonprofits. I know the directors of all of these nonprofits. And I know that each one of them, even the ones that weren't selected, are still grateful to have the opportunity to learn how they can be self-sufficient. I know that we as nonprofits don't want to rely on the government or jump through hoops, loops, and bounds for just a pot of money. So I'm grateful for this opportunity that, the local nonprofits gets this opportunity to be able to do some great things beyond this first year. So, yeah. Way to go, staff. It's great stuff.
Thank you. Commissioner Houle.
Thank you, Mayor. Just another question for staff. This may be a question for the Attorney's Office. And I don't expect you to have the answer now, but if you do, great. If this program is shown to be a success, if we decide that we do want to put it in the fiscal year 25 budget, and I'll note that putting it in the budget doesn't mean we necessarily do it, right? So if we put it in the budget, the money's there to be able to do a round 2 if what we get back from staff is a report that satisfies some of the concerns I'm hearing from some colleagues around whether we're going to get measurable results from this. But let's say we do see measurable outcomes that we feel good about. Putting it in the budget means that we could do a round 2 right away instead of having to wait for like a gap year, basically. And I'm just wondering if we know what funding sources are viable for funding this program running the same way, because we're funding it with ARPA right now, which has different criteria than like general fund monies or something. So is the general fund ineligible? Are general fund monies able to be used to fund a program like this the same way, or would we have to modify it in order to use a different funding source?
Attorney Drake, given our kind of general perspective that if we're providing indigent support, so support for those under 30% area median income, would this be the kind of thing that a general fund expenditure could support?
My initial inclination is yes, but I want to take a closer look, make sure.
So it doesn't go into the gratuities clause?
Well,
Depends on the service delivery.
So if I may clarify my ask
If we're
before-
trying to grow capacity, if we're trying to have nonprofits who can provide services that we would normally provide, and we're getting some benefit, I don't know. That's why I didn't think about it.
I'm sorry.
So,
Do you want to clarify,
well,
Commissioner
yeah,
Gould?
I think what I'm getting at here is, before this ship sails, assuming we want to send it away from the pier, which I'm hoping we will, and I agree with some of the things like Commissioner Taylor was saying. I'm hopeful about how this is going to go. It would be helpful to know at the outset, when we're deciding what to measure as success, like which things can or can't be replicated if we were to do it again. And I imagine that a lot of that hinges on what a different funding source might lead to in terms of different criteria. So if we had to move it to the general fund, if we move it to the general fund, would we have to change who's an eligible applicant, basically, is the question, I guess, right?
Right.
That'd be a helpful thing, I think, for everyone to know at the beginning, so we know what we're measuring, and also for people who maybe applied
can
this
answer
round
that.
to know whether they'd even have a chance next time. So,
Well, I guess first, later on, we're going to talk about the community partnership program. So if we think about the existing quote-unquote independent agencies that are local, like Athens Tutorial or the Athens Land Trust, those are local nonprofits. Those are general fund dollars. So, I think it's been done before. Now, what I wanted to say is, the important thing that I heard and wanted to address was, what are the expectations for the program? So if you're focused on the outcomes of the nonprofits with the 40,000, that's not, I think, is the intent of it as the progression of these folks in their learning and their capacity. So that would be important to know as we go to vote on that. If you're expecting outcomes from the 40,000, we'll be tracking some of those, but, for one nonprofit, it might be part admin, part service delivery, so on and so forth. So I think we need, y'all have been consistently on point about how you want to know about outcomes, so we want to know.
Commissioner Thornton.
And again, I think the concept is excellent. We spend money, and I don't think we monitor it. So, Commissioner Houle asked about how will we fund this. This goes back to the prosperity package and the grant writers. And the neighborhood leaders was originally part of the prosperity package, but now have moved into general funds. And we still do not have grant writers, because that was going to be one of the responsibilities to be able to fund the neighborhood leaders. So I'm not suggesting that this is bad at all. I'm just saying we need to learn by our mistakes or things that we didn't foresee. And we need to foresee where money's coming from, and it'll be interesting to teach these folk how to write a grant, because apparently we aren't writing grants. So all I'm saying is a good concept, but there's some things that we need to put in place, and how we're going to fund this later on, how we're not going to move stuff into the general budget just because we can do it, and that it benefits the community. I've ran a nonprofit for almost 20 years. I know how hard it is to get money, and I know how hard it is to do the work. So I'm not talking about somebody that, I'm not talking from a space where I don't know about nonprofits. And I know how getting grants, relationship building, it's not just the modulars, it's about meeting and networking with funders and building those relationships. So please don't think I'm against this. No, I wouldn't have supported it but before, if I known the RFPs hadn't have been out, but it's a lot more to this, and we just need to be prepared as a government.
Just to clarify some budgeting and staffing elements from your comments, Commissioner Thornton, the prosperity package, while it was a set aside for some designated activities, were general fund dollars.
It was general fund dollars.
So those were general fund dollars. And I want to clarify around the grant writers. I believe we've got those two still.
They are filled, yes.
In the
They're looking
HCD
for
department.
opportunities, yes, sir.
So maybe they can help with this program.
Do you mean to train nonprofits?
I don't know. I just find some money to keep the program going.
Well, I will say that if we want to give the best education experience, we're not necessarily hiring nonprofit trainers on our staff in any capacity. And so we would submit that either we hire somebody with that expertise, or we hire that expertise so those folks going through the experience have the best education that we can provide.
I certainly perceive that as much like when, as a instructor, I would bring in guest speakers, and they would draw that expertise for the benefit of the students, giving this an educational opportunity. We're going to move on to item 19.
Consent.
Happy future St. Patrick's Day consent.
Well, let me point
Aaron's
something
raw,
out
y'all.
that recently came to my attention. If you look on the calendar, New Year's Eve is on Sunday.
But New Year's Eve 2023, correct?
Yes.
And have we not already made the decision about the calendar 2023 Sunday?
That's a good point, Mayor.
We did.
That's a good point.
Okay. Yeah. I was just looking on the Google Calendar, so.
I mentioned that to the mayor earlier because I had, yes, you're right.
Okay.
I can tell
So, yeah.
Manager Williams has holidays on the brain.
So this is, no, as we all should.
Well,
as
that
speaking
came
as-
up earlier this week, and we confirmed that at the beginning of, maybe it was in the last year, y'all
Yes.
approved a
It would have been this time of year ago.
a resolution, ordinance designating New Year's Eve 2023 as the day they can sell alcohol on Sundays.
All right, so given that we've got December of 23 and
Well,
March
that's
of
for this
24.
year, But this, we're doing it for next year now, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly right. So
St. Patrick's.
2 Sundays, just 3.5 months apart.
Well, this is an important note. You can only do it for one Sunday under state law. So it's really important when we're making, when staff's thinking about this, that we're all, because there was some concern before that we'd already done it for Super Bowl Sunday. So bars weren't gonna be able to sell on New Year's. But we learned that through, I guess, staff foresight, from the fact that we did choose New Year's Eve. Is that too much information?
That's great information. That is great information.
I mean, it's
Yes.
not just yours, because sometimes we choose Super Bowl, right?
Alcohol-interested residents and business people of the community
It's a big deal
have
to some
December
people. Some bars
31st,
are freaking out.
2023, and March 17th, 2024 to look forward to. Much as I'm really good friends with Mayor Van Johnson in Savannah, maybe we'll keep some folks in Athens for St. Patrick's Day this year coming up. Everybody okay with 19 on consent?
Consent.
Yes.
All right. 18 is discussion. All right.
And can I
Item
just confirm, was 16 kept on discussion too? That was the stormwater one? I know
16 is
Commissioner
kept on
Myers-
discussion, correct. Yep.
Thank you.
And if I could turn again to Commissioner Davenport, who sits on the Property Committee, could you talk a little bit about the COSTA recommendations?
Yes, I just realized 2 of my colleagues are gone today, but I do want to thank Commissioner Wright, who's the chair, as well as Culpepper for assisting. So this was a long process. Thank you, staff, for the wonderful tours. I was scared that Josh Edwards had to drive us around one evening, but thank you, we got home safe. But we spend a lot of time looking at the properties that ACC own, and one of our agendas was just to look at Costa. Of course, it's right down the street, next door. so pretty much, long story short, HCC has a lot of need for office space. So this pretty much sums up to say that Central Services will look at 5 entities that are currently unhoused, one in particular, economic development. So economic development does not have a proper home right now. And keep in mind, when businesses are attracted to Athens, they got to go through economic development. They currently don't have a house, so there's no office space for them. And this is just pretty much says that we'll move forward in looking into assessing economic development and some other entities to move into CASA. And if there's space available, we will look at nonprofits. Hopefully I got it right. Did I get it right, Josh?
Yep, so I believe economic development, inclusion, and HCD are called out for kind of regular office occupants, and there will be some storage space that's not publicly accessible in the very lower, kind of below grade floor for elections. So I appreciate the property committee doing a lot of work on this. And an element that I'll note that Manager Williams called out in the agenda report is that when the city and the county unified, there was a real desire to support people who had been unsupported for many decades or even centuries in the history of this community. And in many ways, we're drawing together those support departments in one home. And so I'm excited about that. And so if somebody wants the equity, the nonprofit, and the small business support that we provide, that's all going to happen under one roof. Commissioner Thorpe.
One time we were talking about ARPA dollars being used for the renovation. Are we still looking at ARPA dollars? No.
I don't think so. Any of those were allocated for that purpose.
Okay.
Commissioner Houle.
Thank you, Mayor. I know there's been a lot of conversation throughout about this potentially being a community use space, like a more publicly used space in addition to staff. And I see that it's noted, and I think somebody spoke to this, that the inclusion office floor, that first floor, and community spaces. So I was wondering if Commissioner Davenport or staff could speak to what's envisioned in terms of that balance of use between staff office space and some kind of more publicly accessible space. And then the other question I have is, are these departments that we're imagining are going to stay here long-term, or is this kind of their place to be until we complete the judicial municipal center thing, and then they might move to that, and thus opening up space in this building?
Yes. So, so right now I believe we started our master plan. Well, not our master plan, but our
for the broader space allocation.
Space allocation study for all of our departments. So I do, so we're about to do an RP for our space allocation for all of our departments. So this will essentially be, but this is up to Central Service and us, a temporary housing until we get our judicial center up and running, and then we can refurbish or rehab the current courthouse and move departments into there. But once that study is done, then we'll know for sure the space that's actually needed for our departments.
And just to continue to answer that question, Commissioner Houle, the way we're thinking about the space is flexible space and designing it to be open. If you go in the building now, it's very wide open, and the light with the new windows is going to be amazing. So we see creating a space where it can be flexible. Others could use it at a later date and equipping it for that. The first floor, as we're looking at it, we think we only need about half of that first floor. So potentially there could be space in the short term for a community partner there. But what the property committee is saying is we need to get staff in there first and figure out how much space is left before we go forward with an RFP for that. On the top floor where the property committee envisioned economic development, what we're thinking is economic development doesn't need the whole top floor, but that could be a great community space as well for some of the stakeholders, the community partners that economic development partners with, to collectively come into that space and work with them. And a lot of those stakeholders don't have full-time staff, so they might not have the office space that they need. So this could be a place where they come and work on a given day, and others flex. So that top floor, we're visioning as flex space and with economic development there.
Thanks, that's all very helpful, and yeah, I'm excited for this to be done. I think you're right, it's gonna be a beautiful building, and it's gonna be overlooking that park. And I guess I'm also just wondering, when we're thinking about possible ways forward for that flex space, in addition to maybe like an RFP or something for a specific entity, if there's a way to reserve part of it, similar to like what happens at the library, as just like a space people could reserve or just access. You know, if there's a given department that has the capacity to just keep track of that calendar, you know, and let people in and out or something. I feel like that might be a nice way of building more civic involvement in this place that's on what's growing into a government campus, you know. So throwing that idea out there. But, thank you for the thorough answer, and excited that this is happening, you know. It's been like, what, 20 years?
Commissioner Thornton?
Yeah, I forgot it was the old Belk building. What, I guess, Athenians, help me out. The old Belk building is, what's that restaurant now? Mellow Yellow, the pizza place.
Yellow Mushroom.
But if you go upstairs, if you catch out there, it's all like businesses up there. Like they just have the little cubby holes, and I think some actually use those little rooms for, I guess they rent. And then there's open space where it would be, I imagine, the flex look for some of the nonprofits. And I think that's a good opportunity downtown, and having that model, and you know, being around. I think that's excellent to be able to. And I do like these three, the three agencies designated for that building.
Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I just want to put a little pin in the idea that this part of Washington Street could really use re-streetscaping. At one point, there was some concept for it, and that money ended up going towards Clayton Street years ago. So as we look to a new T-Splost in the foreseeable future, I hope we'll look at some re-streetscaping of Washington Street, also to control some of the speeding on it. It's very wide, and people drive like maniacs down Washington Street.
For the pedestrian space, I know that the Downtown Development Authority intends to return to engagement with us after Costa's renovated. They, of course, have the adjacent park, and when that space is able to be accessed, they're thinking about the old bus kiosk and those other spaces nearby.
Yeah, it would be nice if we could, you know, reinvigorate the concept of, you know, city halls, property, and Washington Street streetscaping, you know, in a cohesive kind of pedestrian friendly public space.
Commissioner Davenport?
Okay, so a few months ago, I sent everybody a rendering of what I would like to see at the very top. I know I have to go through, because this is a SPOS project. I know I have to go through ACAC, but I would love for us to put at the top with the three indentations, Heart, Athgs.Ga. It just makes people happy. People are like, oh, I love Athens, and I don't know, it's our way of showing that we love the people of Athens too. But just, right now there's three little indentations at the top that are blank. Just put something colorful, beautiful, I love Athens or something, I don't know. But
And this, of course, is a public-facing project, so eligible for those public art dollars.
They're branding.
there you go.
And we're going to move on, but Commissioner Hamby did ask that I leave this off consent, so just want to make that quick note. Item 21 was the judiciary request for ARPA funds, and the clerk of court has received some new information from the state, so that they're going to ask to put this on hold. So we're going to move beyond that one to 22, which is the 2022 State and Local Cybersecurity Grant Program Award Acceptance. Any questions about this?
Consent.
Everybody okay with consent here? Yeah. All right. 22, Gene, is going to be consent. 23 is vendor selection and the contract award for the Unified Pay Plan Classified Comprehensive Study. You remember that we're moving into a cadence where, kind of in alternating fashion, we look at the general employee pay and classification system, and then separately, of course, on that alternate cycle, the public safety system. And of course, there's not a contract, so there's nothing to, we couldn't move this to consent. But any questions about this? Commissioner Fisher?
One question. I know well, right before we came on, you did a study in 2018.
2018.
And then 2019, we implemented that PACE plan. So how has that outcome been for our staff? I mean, from a positive standpoint, I mean, I know we moved some salaries up and did that, but how has that outcome been?
Well, so the first one we did in 2018 was for all employees, and then it broke them into the unified plan, which is non-public safety, and then public safety. And I think that you know, after not being studied for 23 years, it didn't rectify everything, but it got us closer. And then as an extension of public safety, they requested that step and grade, and the results of that, I think there was more displeasure with than the general unified population. And so since we revisited public safety in 21, you know, now we're just doing them separate and trying to get them on a cadence like that. So this will be just non-public safety. And of course, we've got the results of the employee survey to see where folks think they are, you know, with pay.
Yeah, I like this. Have we seen that, Commissioner?
I did send that out, I think,
About a week
ago. But I can
I'll
resend
go
it.
back and find
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's great. It's good, some good information in there.
Thank you.
Commissioner Houle?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I see what's listed on History 9 with kind of the deliverables to include. And I'm just curious if and how staff is anticipating this vendor incorporating local cost of living. That's something we've discussed in the past, and there's been, I know, some pushback against how that's somewhat atypical, but we've also noted that, you know, we've raised the wage floor, kind of citing the MIT Living Wage Calculator, which is an objective metric that factors in that very local cost of living. And so is a concept like that going to be tied to the updated pay table, which is 9E, or somehow otherwise factored in to the study they do?
And I just want to make sure I understand the concept. Do you mean that the pay structure design would be indexed to the MIT and would adjust with each ensuing change with that?
If and how we would or could index the floor of our, or the pay table to that, which obviously can't be necessarily a moving target, but how would that be factored in year to year?
I think that's a policy of the commission to give that directive. But, you know, I guess it would depend on the increase in the number of employees we have and their tenure here. I mean, it would be a sort of an actuarial projection from year to year. So I think that would just have to be dealt with the commission on an annual basis.
Okay, I mean, maybe this is something to follow up with after here, to not belabor the point in this meeting that's already running long. But I will note that the concept of a wage floor has been brought up the entire time I've been on this commission, and for years before I was on the commission. And the only way we ever found progress on it was to kind of shove in a wage floor provision to the budget 2 years in a row. And the talk has been, well, that would have to be built into the classification system. So I would hope that if we're having a vendor evaluate our pay and classification system, that we would find some way to build into their evaluation the concept of a wage floor that takes into account a living wage as calculated by some kind of objective entity, which, I continue to use the MIT Living Wage Calculator because it's reputable and been around a long time. Not saying it has to be that one, but if not here and if not in the budget, then when do we make sure that we're factoring that in? So I would hope that it could happen here, and I'd invite colleagues to either share their thoughts now or with me later. I don't know if it warrants a CDO or some other future agenda item, but we kind of keep kicking this can around year to year. I know that staff has relayed some consternation about how it was injected into the budget, and acknowledging that that's not an ideal way to do it. Building some kind of a methodology into whatever is recommended by this vendor seems to me like the best way to do it, so.
It makes sense to me that that would be something of a charge to a third-party analyst to say, how do we maintain a wage floor that's going to be commensurate with market needs?
Yeah.
Speaker. Go ahead.
Let
You
me
come
see
back
who
to
I've
me.
got.
You come back to me.
Commissioner Thornton.
You come back to me.
And I'll come back.
I guess and Commissioner Houle is right. We've been kicking this around for forever. And I would assume that that request would already have been made, that, you know, for us to go back and say it now, I'm wondering why it wasn't addressed on onset, or whoever is doing this.
Well, it was part of a CDO. There wasn't a lot of time to react. And so if you think about the mathematical model that would have to be created with all the employees, what their rates of pay are, you know, and all the classifications, then you would have to, you know, at the time that the MIT calculator number comes out, feed it in there, and then it would spit out what the cost of that would be. And that's just an annual decision that the commission has to make every year. It's not something you adopt into being now and then it's on an automatic pilot.
I mean, I'm imagining a consultant could say, what has to happen is that the commission has to do some work in the budgeting process every year. I mean, they could well kind of
Sure.
lay that on our shoulders and say, this is how you'd contemplate your coming fiscal years.
And they could also maybe lay out, like, how are we going to approach that and on what timeline, so that we're not in this weird CDO version of injecting it in. But yeah, I would really hope that that would be a part of what we're going to do here, because otherwise, I really don't understand how we ever keep the concept of a living wage floor alive without repeating the thing that has frustrated staff, which is injecting it in as a CDO once our wages fall way too far behind. And so hoping that we can, while we're mostly caught up, figure out a way to build it into our system, to me, seems like the way to do it with this item here. So I welcome feedback from staff, I guess, on either how that will be incorporated or what we would need to do as a commission-defined option for it to be incorporated.
And I better understand what you're asking now. And as far as having it implemented, so we didn't have the model to ripple it all the way through to the top, so we contained the compression within folks, I think, that were making $20 an hour. It just created compression at the bottom because we didn't have enough money to go all the way through. So what this will do is actually run that model, at least based on the 1560, and understand the ask is, can that be a dynamic model where you can feed into it a new, you know, end value and come out with what the cost is.
Because our 1560 is ahead of what a lot of other communities in Georgia are doing, but it's still actually behind what's considered a living wage now, right? I mean, we made a big leap, you know, after falling behind. The way we fell behind was kind of standard for a lot of communities, but not good for the people who work for us to afford to live here. And so before we get too far behind again, I would hope that we would build this in.
Well, we certainly appreciate the investment in the employees.
Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, normally what happens, I'm an old compensation and classification guy, so I understand a little bit how that works. So once whatever vendor we choose, they're gonna give us, so this is how much it's gonna cost us to get to where we wanna get. And again, I'm not sure what was laid out. I'm assuming the RFP has already gone out. So again, not knowing what's in there, those are some of the things that we need to be looking for. What is it gonna cost this government to get people where we need to get them, for one. And the only other thing I like to ask, can we ever entertain working with Carl Vinson on classification pay study? Because they do that. So I didn't know whether or not we send them an RFP or they pursue that, but I know that's how I got my start. I used to work with Carl Vinson, so.
I'd have to ask.
Okay.
But I know that we've done the public solicitations for it, and we take the folks that come in the door.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Myers?
Yeah, I just want to show some appreciation for bringing up this living wage idea and a way of building that in so that it automatically addresses the wages of our employees. We have so many people here in Athens who are starting here. I mean, we have to do our best here as a county government. It's clearly very difficult to live in Athens. Finding affordable housing is finding a place, but it's also being able to pay for it with your paycheck. And we have to be as much of an example as we can to our students to our employees who are coming in at the bottom of our classifications. So I would be very interested in seeing how we can build that in and ask the company to put that, somehow address that in the contract that we have with the company.
And if ultimately that means we have to revise the RFP and it delays it a month or two, I'd rather do that now than have to wait a whole nother 5 years and keep having this conversation every year for 5 years, so.
So that's the CDO, right?
Well, staff is going to take a look at that. We may or may not need a CDO. I don't think we're on that train yet, but we'll get some feedback. I think they clearly understand what the desire is. Yes.
Okay.
Staff will introduce that to the selected firm.
All right, 24, we spoke about the other night, this, our urban redevelopment plan and opportunity zones. Anything else on that we didn't talk about the other night? Everybody okay with consent?
With consent.
Yeah.
Oh, we have to have a public hearing, I apologize.
Okay, we'll have public hearing.
All right. Thanks, Gene, appreciate it. All right, 25, staff has recommended canceling contracts in support of the automated traffic enforcement system because of challenges with the vendor, just no holds barred. My out of the gate question, Manager Williams, is when could we replace this functionality, particularly around the school speed zones?
Well, the staff's already looking at the next request in the procurement right now, so I would think within the next 6 to 8 months on the outside.
Any further questions? Commissioner Davenport? No? Okay.
Consent?
Everybody consent?
Yes.
All right. 25 is consent. All right. 26 is the proposed construction change order with J.E. Dunn for the Classic Center Arena.
Consent?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, consent.
26 consent. 27 is the proposed design services change order for Perkins and Will.
Consent.
Okay. 27 is consent.
28, 29 consent.
28 is the construction services contract for construction of the Classic Center Arena Bridge and Stairs. We don't have bids back on this yet, do we?
We do.
Oh, we do?
We do.
In the very last version.
Oh,
In
okay.
the
Sorry.
second revision that posted today, it showed up.
All right, yeah, I've not seen the latest and the greatest.
No
So-
consent,
Structural
no
Resources,
consent.
Inc.
So it's bid out, we put it out to public bid, and a separate contractor other than J.E. Dunn was the lowest bidder. And it is below what our budgeted price was, just slightly, but it is below.
Okay.
So we save money.
All right, everybody okay with consent on
No,
that?
I'd rather leave that off consent. I
All
mean,
right.
it's a major thing here. Just
It is-
wanna
it is
look
a
at
large
reading
expenditure. This
before
is
we put it
true.
on consent.
Any input on that? Just want to leave it off consent?
I
Just
wanna leave
there
it
may
up,
be some
yeah,
input.
I want to read it.
Okay, perfect. 29 is the Bishop Park Pool Replacement Award of Construction Services. We know that just specialty construction is particularly expensive these days. Appreciate staff putting together a funding vehicle to make sure that we can bring this back to the public as a functioning park, and that we don't have to be dormant for an additional year. I was a little bit worried about that, I'll be very honest. Any questions about
It's
that?
got the,
Commissioner Fisher?
so which one of the bids we're gonna go with? I know we had several, so we're gonna go with the low one, the 5 million one? Was that the?
Yes. I think it's the base bid and
Right.
alternate one are the two that are going in, and that was to the lowest, most
No,
responsive bidder.
okay. I just wanna make sure that we had several,
I think we had 2 bids,
right.
if I'm not mistaken.
One was $300,000 difference in the bid, so, okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I'll just offer that, thank you, Mayor, for that. So we just consistently are getting around a $7 million cost estimate bid, what have you. We've been through it several times. And because the commission wanted to stay committed to that design and get as much as possible and not VE out things, we're now recommending that you use $2.9 million of unallocated interest to make up enough to get the deal done.
Yeah, we complain about interest rates, but we actually earn some interest these days, which was not the case for quite some time. So, any other input on this? Consent okay with
So
everybody?
all the alts are built into this, is that what I'm understanding correctly, like all the.
Add alternates.
All the ads.
Well, not, it was the base bid and bid alternate one. is what we're going with.
Okay.
And what those include are in the agenda item under Facts and Issues 13.
And when will we start, once we award how fast will we award the contract, Manager Williams?
I'm sorry.
Once we.
Oh,
when
how
will we
fast?
award it? When will that contract be awarded?
It would be awarded, in December. And we'll get them started, notice to proceed in January, and that'll get us done just in time for the following year.
Yeah, that's why I was, okay.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Link?
That's what I was going to ask. Does that mean it's going to be ready for this summer of 24?
25.
25, okay.
Yeah,
It'll be
but
under
we won't
construction.
lose
That's what
an
I
additional
thought.
season, which could have happened had we run into another layer of trouble.
Can you talk a little bit about what accommodations have been made since the pool's been closed, as far as swim team and stuff like that?
I'd have to ask Commissioner Link on
Okay, could
that
you send me an
specifically. There were
email?
some accommodations made in
Yeah.
partnerships, but yes, that we can have that in the follow-up report.
Okay, thank you.
Okay with consent, knowing that that's going to be in the follow-up report? Okay. All right, Gene. 29 is consent. 30 is the Stop Violence Against Women grant. It's a recurrent grant that we see every year.
Consent.
All right. 30 is consent. 31 is the Community Partnership Annual Request for Proposals process. Manager Williams had sent this out as a NOPA, and it's now emerged full bore as an agenda item. Any questions about this?
Yeah, I just wanted to, a couple of things. One is, so I think it was looking at one of these addendums, and we just got this recently. I'm not sure when we got it. We just had the work session on Tuesday, right? But the quasi-governmental agencies like the library, public defenders, et cetera, they will continue getting current budget requests, because I see that. But on the other agencies that are moving to the community partnership program process, that's the Athens Neighborhood Health Center, the Athens Tutorial Program, Envision Athens, United Way, the Land Trust Urban Builders Program, and the Athens Area Homeless Shelters. So all of those programs, like for example, I know the tutorial program's gotten the money for a whole long time. Athens Area Homeless Shelter, that's been more recent since I joined the commission. I don't know about the urban, I don't know the history of those. So are we, they obviously can read this agenda item, but they're aware that they're going to have to go through a competitive process, and we're going to let them know ASAP, right? Of course,
Yes.
on that. And so I did, I was looking through the application here, and I know that we're all big on outcomes, and I noticed that I like not that there was not only a section on the outcomes themselves, but I like how there was actually how you're going to document those outcomes in there, and that has to be included as well. Are we just giving the same, is it going to depend upon, I guess, what we put in the budget next year? In terms of right now, you have 550,000, which is what we've allotted this year to those programs?
542 was.
You rounded it up, right? So are we anticipating that it's the same amount of money, or that we are going to increase that money?
We were just converting that amount of money, and you could very well give it back to the very same agencies. We're not, saying that they're not very effective or contributing to the community.
But this is going to open it up,
Yes.
right? This is one more thing that we're opening it up for, and it looks like in number 8, we were talking about the gratuities clause before, but ACC-GOV funding is subject to the state of Georgia's gratuity clause. Applicants receiving direct assistance, so that's using the community partnership program funds must be at 30% or below the area median income. So does that mean the services that are provided by the nonprofits have to be documenting people that their participants are in that area? And then they also have to show how their programming ties into our strategic plan but not their general operating and overhead costs. Could you just really clearly, quickly give me an example of that? What would not be applicable? What are those general operating and overhead costs? Like what would be not applicable and what would be applicable? Just a simple example.
Salaries would be applicable.
Would be applicable, but my rent for the building would not be applicable.
That's overhead. Yeah.
Okay, so the salaries for whatever the program is that's being delivered, okay. Or materials, I would assume. You're using materials for the program, salary.
Certainly, we want the vast majority of the funding to go to the target population.
Okay.
Commissioner Thornton?
I would like to pull this. I'm in conversation with the manager.
It's on discussion now.
Okay. No, I need to talk to him outside of today. I don't want this on consent.
Oh, no.
Commissioner Hool?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of ask staff, we talked about this a good bit in the budget season. If this is passed as is, will this kind of address the timing concerns that staff has been experiencing? So that'll be, and I know that a lot of the agencies that we've partnered with have also experienced struggles with, getting the money on time. So if this moves forward, that kind of perennial issue of the timing of getting funding out and the scramble that staff has experienced and agencies have experienced, we should be addressing that with this.
We're still going to have to go through the contracting process.
The contracting part, of course, but the issues of the timing exacerbating that problem will be resolved if we pass this. Is that right? Okay.
Yes.
Because we'll start it sooner in the year.
Yeah.
Got it. According to page 4.
I'm looking at the timeline here.
So, yeah, but by the time the fiscal year starts, we'll have all these.
Yes.
All right, we're going to leave this on discussion. 32, you've received just a recent email correspondence from the manager regarding, and this is a partnership that the Athens Housing Authority has entered into with a development that was previously approved through a zoning item that would provide about 300 bedrooms for persons under 60% area median income, right behind Space Kroger. I don't know that everybody's read the agenda item just because it's really new. I might leave it off consent.
Oh, okay.
And it's 192 units.
192 units and I think 300 bedrooms.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And we
So,
could leave it on.
any other questions about that?
I'm excited.
Me too.
Yeah.
Very excited.
Same. I appreciate AHA Director Connie Stottinger and her board for stepping into a new realm. Honestly, appreciate that a great deal. 33 is the Rock Springs renaming process to Christine W. Howard Park, who is a longtime youth support professional here in the community. He passed away some time ago. Our policy indicates that a renaming will be in front of the public for 60 days. So this is just part of that public notice, and then it'll be consummated in January. Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I look forward to seeing this move forward. I guess we don't put it on consent because it's rolling over into January, correct?
That's right.
Yeah. I enjoy reading the letters and speaking to folks in the neighborhood.
All right. We spoke about the pump station.
Right.
We talked about the pump
We
station.
sure did. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Thornton and a second from Commissioner Myers. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right,
Happy
thanks, everyone.
Thanksgiving, everybody.
Stay here.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving.